Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Timothy Jones Jr. Timothy Jones Jr. and Amber Kaiser, a divorced couple, had 5 children together, all under the age of 9. Mara Grace, Elias, Xavier, Nathalie, Gabrielle Asher, and Elaine Marie. The family lived in Lexington, South Carolina. When they first met as teenagers, Amber was attracted to Timothy's world and felt a strong connection to him and his way of life. They got married young, and while Timothy pursued his education in Mississippi, Amber dedicated herself to being a homemaker. Timothy grew up with a mother who struggled with schizophrenia, which gradually worsened over time. She eventually needed constant care. When Timothy's father was just 20 years old, he took Timothy to live with his grandmother. There, Timothy was exposed to a troubled environment marked by domestic violence, substance abuse, and alcoholism. Despite a tough upbringing, Timothy displayed a natural aptitude for numbers, effortlessly solving math problems, and disassembling and reassembling computers with ease. However, his life took a dramatic turn when he entered adolescence and began experiencing auditory hallucinations. At the age of 10, Timothy started using drugs and drinking excessively, and at 15, he suffered a traumatic brain injury in a car accident. This injury affected his frontal lobe, the area of the brain responsible for regulating impulses, which is also linked to psychopathic tendencies. Following the accident, Timothy's behavior became increasingly erratic and stubborn. He grew intensely jealous of his father, feeling threatened by anyone who had a relationship with him, believing they were taking away his father's attention. Over time, Timothy became convinced that his father didn't love him and harbored a deep-seated fear of abandonment. After completing high school, Timothy aspired to join the elite U.S. Navy SEALs, but he lacked the required athletic talent and discipline, leading to his eventual expulsion from the training program due to substance abuse. In 2001, Timothy Jones Jr. was sentenced to a year in a labor camp at an Illinois state prison. When he was released, he appeared to have undergone a significant transformation, with religion becoming a central guiding force in his life. At an amusement park in Chicago, he met Amber, the woman who would become the mother of his children, and they quickly decided to get married, in accordance with the rigid expectations of Timothy's Pentecostal church. At the time of their marriage, Amber was 19 years old, and Timothy was 22. Soon after, Amber became aware of the church's strict rules, which prohibited women from cutting their hair, wearing pants, makeup, or jewelry. Timothy believed in the principle that women should submit to their husbands and have many children. Timothy was a devout individual who dedicated his life to the church. Despite many people warning him against taking the Bible too literally, he remained committed to his faith. He and his spouse had 3 children in quick succession: Mara, Elias, and Natan, each born a year apart. As their family grew, they relocated to Mississippi, where Timothy earned a degree in computer science and engineering from the state university with highest honors. Throughout this period, Timothy Jones Jr. successfully balanced his marital life, parenthood, and various jobs. His family was incredibly proud of him, recognizing Timothy as a remarkable genius with a bright future. Timothy's life seemed to be progressing smoothly. He secured a job at Intel as a computer chip manufacturer, which his wife Amber saw as a means to a better life. Having lived in student housing in Mississippi, they aspired to raise their 3 children in a larger house and even considered hiring a nanny. Timothy's dream of living on a farm led him to buy a rundown trailer on a dirt road in Red Bank. He purchased animals to raise, and Amber stayed at home to care for the kids and the animals. The problem was that Amber was isolated, with no car and no driving skills in this rural area. By 2012, they had 2 more children, and problems started to surface. Timothy questioned whether he was the father of their youngest daughter, Elaine. He also wanted Amber to homeschool the kids. Despite her limited education, she only finished high school. Amber, who already felt lonely with no nearby family, and her husband's family living far away in Mississippi, felt even more inferior to her intelligent and educated husband. Tensions rose when Timothy accused Amber of having an affair with their neighbor. Their marriage began to fall apart, and they considered getting a divorce. Timothy wanted sole custody of the children, so he visited a therapist and asked for a statement to give to his divorce lawyer, claiming he was capable of raising the children on his own. Amber, who didn't have a lawyer and was unsure of what to do, eventually decided it would be best for the children to stay with their father, as she was unemployed and lacked education. As the primary breadwinner, Timothy was granted full custody, and Amber was allowed to visit the children regularly. She left her husband and children behind. However, Timothy's mental state began to deteriorate. Haunted by his failed marriage, he started using drugs and drinking again, struggling with the voices in his head. He became easily provoked over minor issues, and Amber reported that he had once beaten her in front of their children until she lost consciousness. As Timothy struggled to balance work and taking care of the children, he hired a nanny service despite his own instability. The first two nannies observed that his home was spotless, and he was dedicated and attentive to his children. Later, he switched services and hired 17-year-old Crystal, who had a young daughter of her own. Timothy soon began an affair with the nanny and attempted to convert her to his religion, insisting she adopt the church's customs, such as wearing long dresses, growing her hair out, and submitting to his authority. When Crystal refused, their relationship began to fall apart. Crystal later stated that Timothy was extremely harsh towards his children, making them stand on their toes for hours, because he believed punishment was necessary to purify their sick bodies. She left after catching him trying to hit her young daughter. After Crystal's departure, Timothy hired another nanny who noticed a significant change in him. His previously clean home was now filthy, filled with trash, dirty clothes, and infested with cockroaches. Over time, Timothy Jones Jr. became increasingly violent, punishing his children daily. He started feeding them only oatmeal throughout the day, limiting them to one meal. In August 2014, the nanny contacted South Carolina's social services to report the neglect and abuse in Timothy's home. She described the lack of food and the physical abuse the children suffered. The abuse was so severe that the teachers at the elementary school, attended by the older children, had previously reported it to the agency months earlier. The agency had required Jones to sign a written promise never to mistreat or hit his children again, as they often arrived at school with bruises. On the afternoon of Thursday, August 28, 2014, Timothy picked up his 3 older children from elementary school and his 2 younger ones from the nanny around 7 p.m. Timothy became enraged about some broken outlets in their mobile home. He questioned his 6-year-old son Natan about the damage, and when Natan denied any involvement, Timothy forced Natan to do push-ups, squats, and other exercises repeatedly, while whipping him with a belt whenever he slowed down. Amber, Timothy's ex-wife, called to talk to her kids. During the call, Natan told his mom about the punishment he got for breaking some outlets, saying it was an accident. Timothy got angry, ended the call, and told Amber to stop protecting Natan. After hours of being punished, Natan was extremely tired, dehydrated, and begging for it to stop. He passed out, and Timothy carried him to bed, leaving him alone without water or any help. Phone records show that Amber tried to call back 8 more times, but Timothy didn't answer. Around 1 a.m., Timothy searched for a specific scene from the movie American History on YouTube, even though he knew Natan was already unconscious. At around 1 a.m., Timothy took his 8-year-old daughter Mia to a local store to buy 10 packs of cigarettes. When they got back home, Timothy grabbed Mia and started choking her. Then he went to his 7-year-old son Elias and did the same thing. After that, he took off his belt and went to his 2-year-old son Gabriel and 1-year-old daughter Elaine, putting the belt around their necks and pulling until they stopped breathing. Seeing that the kids weren't moving, Timothy took their sheets and blankets, wrapped each of them separately, and put them in the back seat of his car. On Friday, August 29th, Jones's father called him at 7:43 a.m., but got no response. Later, at 9:36 a.m., the nanny tried calling Jones and finally got through to him on her second attempt. She asked if he would be taking the younger kids to daycare, and he told her not to worry, saying he would take them the following week, explaining that they were currently out of town and would return by Tuesday. Between noon and 2 p.m. that day, Jones drove around, searching online for out-of-state drugs. At 1:27 p.m., he was near Alabama, but he ignored his grandmother's multiple calls, totaling 23 attempts between 3 and 5 p.m. During this time, Jones also searched online for tobacco shops in Alabama and Mississippi, as well as campsites in South Carolina. His location was recorded in Georgia at 8:04 p.m. The next day, August 30th, his grandmother continued sending messages, asking why he wasn't responding to her calls. Then, on August 31st, his phone's location was recorded in Red Bank, New Jersey, at 10:08 a.m. Jones spent the day searching the internet for camping stores, RV parks, and landfills in South Carolina, as well as animal services. He also looked up 2 songs at 4:54 p.m. Timothy Jones Jr. received a reminder from the nanny to bring diapers when he dropped off Gabriel. An hour later, he responded, informing her that he had left South Carolina with the children to start anew, and asking her to clean the mobile home, giving her permission to take whatever she wanted from the belongings he left behind. On September 1st, Timothy was driving from one place to another. The next morning, at 10:35, he searched online for information on disposing of bodies in landfills, making muriatic acid, and camping near countries with no extradition laws, as he was facing legal issues and considering his escape options. Throughout the day, he received updates from the nanny, who had cleaned the mobile home. His boss at Intel also messaged him, inquiring about his work attendance, around 6 p.m. On the morning of September 3rd, a coworker called him twice, but Timothy did not respond. Later, surveillance video captured Timothy at a well-known store, purchasing a saw, muriatic acid, garbage bags, a 5-gallon bucket, and goggles at 3:37 a.m. He also searched online for information about his missing children. On September 4th at 6:33 a.m., Timothy Jones Jr.'s location was tracked to Charleston, South Carolina, where he deposited a check for $3,508 at a bank. The next day, on September 5th, his phone was briefly turned on in Louisville, Georgia, but his exact location was not recorded. On the morning of September 6th, Jones placed the decomposing bodies of his children in black plastic garbage bags and abandoned them in a clearing along a rural forest road in Alabama, which was recorded at 9:14 a.m. The bodies had been in the back seat of his vehicle since August 29th. Later that day, at around 7 p.m., Jones was stopped at a traffic checkpoint in Smith County, Mississippi. A police officer approached his vehicle and noticed a strong, unpleasant smell coming from inside, as well as apparent bleach stains on the carpet that suggested a recent cleaning attempt. When questioned about the whereabouts of his children, Jones initially denied having any children, then claimed he had 3 children who were in South Carolina. The officers asked for the phone numbers of his father, grandmother, and ex-wife to verify the children's safety, and after making the calls, they promptly arrested Jones. Jones felt overwhelmed with sorrow and anger when he caught one of his sons playing with an electrical outlet. In a fit of rage, he grabbed the boy by the neck and choked him until he lost consciousness. Later, he used a belt to discipline his other son, as his hands were too large to fit around the boy's neck. When his eldest daughter walked into the room and saw what was happening, Jones grabbed her and choked her with his hands until her face turned purple. After the incident, Jones put his son Natan to bed, only to discover him dead when he checked on him later. During the investigation, Jones explained that he killed his children because he heard voices in his head, leading him to believe they were plotting against him. He also thought that they would be better off in heaven. During his attempted escape, Jones drove through the southeast with the bodies of his 5 children hidden under blankets in his car. He eventually dumped their bodies in a remote Alabama forest before being arrested by chance during a routine traffic stop in Mississippi. Timothy claimed it was an accident and said the punishment he imposed on Natan went too far, leading to the boy's death from exhaustion caused by the strenuous exercises. When he found Natan lifeless in his room, Timothy was overcome with panic and decided to kill all his children. The pathologist found it difficult to determine the exact cause of Natan's death, but suggested that the excessive exercise had weakened him so much that it would have taken minimal force to end his life. The investigators were puzzled as to why Timothy didn't call for emergency services if he genuinely believed it was an accident. Instead, he attempted to hide and dispose of the children's bodies on the same day. Timothy eventually agreed to take the investigators to the location where he had hidden the bodies. On September 11th, authorities recovered the remains of Timothy Jones's 5 children. The evidence collected from his car was handed over to South Carolina authorities and included personal items such as family photos, children's clothing, drawings by the children, letters written by their mother to the children, Timothy Jones's university diploma, and his passport. Additionally, handwritten notes by Jones were found, detailing to-do lists that included instructions on how to dispose of bodies, including grinding bones into powder or small pieces, and burning them. The lists also mentioned supplies needed, such as camping gear, gasoline, and muriatic acid. Upon his arrest on September 13, 2014, Jones was placed in a special isolation cell, away from the general prison population. Since then, he has undergone evaluation by various mental health professionals, including psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, and forensic experts. Although the experts' opinions differ, some have diagnosed Jones with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, or personality disorder. These experts suggest that Jones's mental state at the time of the crime might have been exacerbated by his drug use and a traumatic brain injury he suffered at the age of 15, which could have contributed to an underlying psychotic condition. In late May 2019, Timothy Jones Jr. was tried for a crime considered one of the worst murders in South Carolina's history. The trial featured weeks of intense testimonies and evidence presented against him. After only 2 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered a verdict on June 13, 2019, sentencing Jones Jr. to death. Currently, he is being held in solitary confinement at a correctional institution, where he wears a green jumpsuit that distinguishes him as a death row inmate. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Petit family. The Petit family was revered as a model family, exceeding expectations with their stable economic background and exemplary children. They effortlessly commanded admiration from those around them. William Petit, the patriarch, was a Connecticut native and a standout athlete in high school, particularly in basketball, where he naturally assumed a leadership role. In addition to his athletic prowess, he was also the valedictorian of his class, as evidenced by his law degree from Dartmouth University. However, his true passion lay not in law, but in helping people, caring for the sick, and making the world a better place. So, after graduating, he pursued a career in medicine at the University of Pittsburgh. During his 3rd year of residency at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, William met Jennifer Hawk, an oncology nurse and co-director of the health center's pre-graduate internship program. They soon fell deeply in love, and those who knew them attested that they were perfect for each other. They married in 1985, and 4 years later, they welcomed their first daughter, Haley. The pregnancy spurred them to form a large family, leading them to purchase a house in Cheshire, Connecticut. On November 17, 1995, their second daughter, Michaela, was born. After giving birth, Jennifer resumed her work as a nurse and co-director of the internship. Sadly, she was later diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a disease that has no cure, which she fought against for the rest of her life. Despite this, her family remained supportive throughout. At just 10 years old, their eldest daughter began raising funds for the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, an endeavor that would yield significant sums over the years. Meanwhile, Michaela excelled academically and planned to take over the fundraising efforts when her sister went to college, enabling her to continue making a positive impact in her community. Having spent the summer learning to cook, she often delighted in preparing meals for her family. Tragically, this ordinary activity led to a fateful encounter with the perpetrator. On a July night in 2007, Michaela was preparing dinner for her family, but required additional ingredients for her recipe. So she and her mother went to the nearest market. Joshua Komisarjevsky, who had recently been released from prison, happened to be at the same location. Komisarjevsky's childhood was marked by trauma and complexity. Born to teenage parents, he was adopted by the Komisarjevsky family, a renowned European artistic dynasty, just a week after birth. His adoptive family was deeply religious and enforced strict discipline, which contributed to his struggles in school despite his high IQ. Eventually, his parents opted to homeschool him. During his trial, Komisarjevsky alleged that he was sexually abused by a cousin during childhood, but his family chose to keep the incident quiet. This traumatic experience likely contributed to the development of his rebellious and chaotic personality. By 14, Joshua Komisarjevsky had faced accusations of abusing his sister, and around this time he committed his first burglary, launching his career as a thief. In 2002, he was arrested for the first time on 18 counts of burglary and theft, earning him a 9-year prison sentence. During the trial, he made a chilling admission, revealing that he derived pleasure from listening to people while they slept and invading their privacy, feeding off their insecurity. Released on parole in 2007 at 27, officials deemed him a threat to society, a calculating criminal with perverted tendencies. But the jury disregarded these warnings, deeming Joshua fit for release. After his release, he moved into a halfway house for ex-convicts, where he encountered his future accomplice, Stephen Hayes. Hayes had a lengthy history of incarceration, starting at the age of 16 in 1980. Throughout the years, he was repeatedly arrested for violent robbery and burglary, earning him multiple sentences. In 2004, he received a prison sentence, only to be granted parole in 2006, which ultimately led him to the same residence where he crossed paths with Komisarjevsky. On the night of July 22, 2007, Michaela Petit was busily preparing dinner for her family, only to realize she needed additional ingredients to complete her recipe. She asked her mother to drive her to the nearest market to pick up the necessary items. What they didn't know was that they were being closely watched by Komisarjevsky, who took meticulous note of every detail, from the make and model of their vehicle to their facial features and Michaela's distinctive blonde hair. After finishing their shopping, the Petit family returned home, oblivious to the fact that they were being tailed. The family had a peaceful dinner, unaware it would be their last together. Later, while the others slept, William Petit dozed off in the living room. Suddenly, strange noises shattered the peace. William was attacked, beaten with a baseball bat, and left tied up in the basement. The intruders proceeded upstairs to locate Haley's room, where they found her asleep. Haley and her sister Michaela were bound to their bedposts by their hands and feet, their heads shrouded by pillowcases. In the master bedroom, Jennifer Petit slumbered peacefully. The intruders crept in and roused her effortlessly, swiftly restraining her hands and feet. With the family members under their control, the intruders took their time to survey the premises, even pausing to smoke cigarettes in the living room. After ransacking the home for jewelry, cash, and other valuables, they finally prepared to depart. As the Petits heard the burglars making their exit, they must have thought the ordeal was finally over. But, unbeknownst to them, their torment was only just beginning. After selling stolen items at a pawn shop, the ex-convicts were disappointed to find they hadn't gotten as much money as they had expected. Motivated by greed, they decided to return to the house. There, they found a check register with $40,000 and planned to steal $155,000. Before going back, they filled a couple of gasoline cans, which was captured on surveillance camera footage. Back at the house, they presented their plan to Jennifer, threatening to kill her entire family if she didn't cooperate. Desperate to protect her daughter, Jennifer agreed to accompany Stephen to the bank the next morning. Meanwhile, Joshua took advantage of Jennifer's absence by entering Michaela's room, where he untied her and began to undress her. He took photos with his cell phone and sexually assaulted her, recording the act. Afterwards, he took her to the bathroom to clean her and ensure no DNA evidence was left behind. Then, he ordered her to put her pajamas back on and tied her up again. The autopsy of Michaela later revealed evidence that Harvey had raped her. During the examination, State Medical Examiner Dr. Wayne Carver found Harvey's DNA in her body. At the bank, everything appeared normal, but Stephen was unaware of Jennifer's actions in the queue before she approached the teller. While waiting in line, Jennifer wrote a discreet note on a flyer asking for assistance. The note read, "My name is Jennifer Hawk Petit. I have $115,000 in my savings account, and I need to withdraw it. I'm in a desperate situation. My family is being held hostage and will be killed if I don't comply. Please, someone, call the police." Despite Jennifer not having any identification, the teller decided to give her the money. As soon as Jennifer received the cash, she left the bank and returned to the car where her captor was waiting. Meanwhile, the bank employee promptly called the police to report the incident. The manager informed the 911 dispatcher that Hawk Petit claimed the home invaders were being courteous, and that she believed their sole intention was to steal money. In response to the bank's alert, the Chester police carefully assessed the situation, establishing a discreet vehicle perimeter without alerting the intruders. With the situation now under surveillance, the police observed from a safe distance, opting not to intervene just yet. Joshua boasted to his accomplice about attacking Michaela, implying he'd do the same to Jennifer. Stephen restrained and undressed Jennifer while William, hearing her cries, yelled up and was told to calm down. Regaining consciousness, William freed himself, crawled to the stairs and escaped to the backyard, fearing they'd kill them all. Joshua went to check on William, only to discover that he had escaped. In her later confession, Hayes revealed that while she and Stephen were raping Hawk Petit on the living room floor, Komisarski burst in and announced that William had fled. Upon hearing this, Stephen strangled Jennifer to death, continuing to assault her even in her final moments. Shortly after, they heard William's cries for help. A neighbor, initially unaware of the traumatized boy's identity due to his severe injuries, called 911, realizing the police would soon arrive. To eliminate all evidence, the intruders doused Jennifer's lifeless body and parts of the house, including the daughter's bedrooms and their own clothing, with gasoline. Investigators later found traces of the accelerant on the Petit sisters' beds and the clothes they wore. Hayes and Komisarski set the house ablaze and fled, unaware that the authorities had set up a perimeter a few miles ahead. Within 5 minutes, they collided with a police vehicle, and after being surrounded, the two perpetrators were pulled from their car and arrested. They were immediately identified as ex-convicts. Meanwhile, the fire raging through the house was growing in intensity. An ambulance arrived, and Dr. William Petit, the gravely injured father, was rushed to the nearest hospital. Soon after, firefighters battled the blaze, and upon extinguishing it, they stumbled upon a horrific scene amidst the remnants of the house. The first body discovered was Jennifer's, her remains charred with remnants of rope bound to her ankles. Upon reaching the second floor, they found Michaela, still tied to her bed, having succumbed to the devastating flames. In a surprising twist, Haley had managed to break free from her restraints and attempted to escape, but sadly collapsed just a few meters away, overcome by the toxic smoke. William managed to free himself from his restraints, escape the house, and crawl to a neighbor's yard to seek help. The neighbor failed to recognize him at first, due to the severity of his injuries. Both Hayes and Komorowski confessed to the murders. During her interrogation, detectives noted that Hayes smelled of gasoline throughout. Each assailant accused the other of being the driving force and mastermind behind the home invasion. Komorowski's diary, later entered into evidence, revealed that he blamed William for the murders, calling him a coward and claiming that he could have saved his family if he had wanted to. The trial of Stephen Hayes began on September 13, 2010, with a jury comprising 7 women and 5 men. The defense argued that Joshua Komorowski was the mastermind behind the crime, responsible for escalating its violent nature, while prosecutors argued that both Hayes and Komorowski shared responsibility. After approximately 5 hours of deliberation on October 5th, the jury found Hayes guilty. The sentencing phase began on October 18th, with the jury initially divided over recommending life imprisonment or death. Hayes' defense argued that life imprisonment without parole would be a harsher punishment. On November 8th, the jury recommended the death sentence for Hayes on each of the 6 capital felony counts. Earlier, Hayes had attempted to negotiate a plea bargain for a life sentence, but prosecutors sought the death penalty. Dr. William Petit, the sole survivor, remarked on the verdict, while the Connecticut State Judicial Branch took the unprecedented step of offering post-traumatic stress assistance to jurors, acknowledging the trial's profoundly disturbing nature. This historic measure was necessitated by the jurors' 2-month exposure to graphic images and gruesome testimony during the triple murder trial, marking the first time the state judicial branch had provided such support. On December 2, 2010, Hayes expressed remorse for the suffering he had inflicted on the Petit family, stating that his own death would be a welcome relief and hoping it would bring peace and comfort to those he had hurt. Judge John Blue handed down 6 death sentences and an additional 106 years for other crimes. However, in August 2015, Hayes' death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment when Connecticut abolished capital punishment. The trial of Joshua Komorowski began on September 19, 2011. His lawyers offered a guilty plea in exchange for a life sentence, but prosecutors sought the death penalty, arguing that Komorowski was under Hayes' influence. Komorowski was found guilty on October 13, 2011, and the jury recommended the death penalty on December 9, 2011. During sentencing, Komorowski expressed shame and remorse for the harm caused, claiming he had not intended to kill anyone. Judge Blue set July 20, 2012 as Komorowski's execution date, underscoring his responsibility for the crime. However, like Hayes, Komorowski's death sentence was converted to life imprisonment in August 2015, following Connecticut's abolition of the death penalty. The trials and sentencing of Hayes and Komorowski represent a dark and pivotal chapter in Connecticut's legal history. The heinous nature of the crimes and the emotional toll on all involved, including the jurors, exposed the complexities and challenges of the legal system in dealing with such atrocious acts. Dr. Petit's statements during the trials poignantly highlighted the lasting impact of the crime on surviving family members and the community, which continues to pay tribute to the memory of the victims. The sole survivor, Dr. William Petit, was released from the hospital just 4 days after admission to attend his family's funeral. Tormented by guilt and the anguish of having survived, he later founded a foundation to aid children and young victims of violence, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. He later pursued a career in politics, becoming a state representative as a member of the Republican Party. The brutal murders of the Petit family have had a profound and lasting impact on the community, which comes together every year to honor their memory. Lingering questions persist among family members and the public regarding whether the authorities responded adequately to the crisis, particularly with respect to the time spent observing the situation from a safe distance, which may have been critical in preventing the devastating outcome. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Christina Carlin Craft. Christina Rose Carlin Craft was born on November 11, 1983, in a coastal town in southern New Jersey, to Stuart Craft and Deanne Carlin. She had a natural flair for being in front of the camera, which would eventually shape her career path. After graduating from high school in Linwood in 2000, Christina worked as a waitress in southern New Jersey and later at the Borgata Hotel Casino and Spa in Atlantic City for several years. However, her ultimate dream was to become a model, and her determination paid off. She eventually found success in the modeling industry. In her promotional material, Christina revealed that she enjoyed participating in photo shoots featuring high-end lingerie and swimwear. According to Eva Waltz, a friend she met on a 3-day Maxim magazine shoot, Christina was a charming and beautiful woman with a great sense of humor. With dark hair and blue eyes, she embodied the essence of a fashion model. Christina had always dreamed of being on the cover of Playboy. In 2003, while working as a waitress at the Borgata Casino, she met Alex Urtielli. They started dating soon after, and Alex became her supportive partner, never opposing her career choices. After a long-term relationship, they got engaged. The couple stayed together until Christina's death. Christina achieved her goal of becoming Cybergirl of the Month for May 2009 and was invited to the Playboy Mansion. She attended parties at the mansion, gaining entry into the glamorous world. This success marked the peak of her career, and her ambitions soared, especially after meeting Hugh Hefner, whose attention was hard to capture. However, despite this, Christina failed to become a Playboy magazine model. Thousands of girls send their photos to the magazine, but only one is chosen. At 26, Christina was considered too old for the magazine, which typically features younger models. This setback affected her confidence, but she continued modeling. Her extensive portfolio included work with Redken, Maxim, Victoria's Secret, Vanity Fair, and many others. To further her career, Christina moved to New York with her boyfriend Alex. However, not all brands were willing to work with her due to her explicit photo shoot. Christina's career began to decline after her appearance in Playboy, ultimately coming to an end. Overcoming this challenging period in her life was undoubtedly tough, but she always had Alex's support. Known for her elegant appearance, captivating beauty, and scandalous behavior, Christina made headlines in 2016 for causing a scene at the Smith, a restaurant in New York. According to law enforcement sources and court documents, Christina Carlin Craft, 34, and her male companion got into an argument with the manager, Sergei Anakin, on March 6 over their bill. The man refused to pay, and the manager intervened. Witnesses claim Christina was drunk and falsely accused the manager of pushing her, but surveillance footage proved otherwise. She allegedly struck someone in the neck around 10 p.m., causing redness and significant pain. Christina was charged with misdemeanor assault, attempted assault, and harassment. However, the DA offered her a deal, and the charges were dropped on the condition that she remains trouble-free for 6 months. Christina has always had a fondness for Philadelphia, particularly Ardmore, which she considered a safe haven. With this in mind, Alex purchased an apartment in Ardmore in 2018 and relocated to Pennsylvania with her. However, Christina soon discovered that Ardmore wasn't as safe as she had thought. On August 18, 2018, she contacted the police to report a robbery. Earlier that evening, Christina had spent time at a bar in Philadelphia, but her memories of the night were hazy. The next thing she recalled was waking up the following morning, feeling groggy and suspecting that someone had drugged her with illegal substances. She had no recollection of how she got home or if anyone had accompanied her. At the time, Alex was away on a business trip. Feeling uneasy and anxious, Christina repeatedly expressed her concerns about her safety. During the investigation, police obtained CCTV footage showing a car arriving at Christina's apartment around 3 a.m. Unconscious in the back seat, Christina was being driven by a thief who stole her keys, entered her home, and plundered over $50,000 worth of valuables, including jewelry, designer bags, pillows, sunglasses, a credit card, and personal documents. The thief remained in the apartment for about an hour and a half before returning to the car, helping Christina inside, and then leaving her in the hallway. They placed the keys back in her purse and drove away. The police swiftly identified the perpetrator using a credit card statement. The driver was Andre Melton, a man with a prior criminal record. He was driving a rented 2018 Kia Sorento with Virginia license plates. Witnesses reported seeing the same car near Christina's house on August 17th, which was confirmed by police using specialized license plate recognition software. While the police were still searching for Andre Melton to recover Christina's stolen items, a far more serious crime took place. Just 4 days later, on August 22, 2018, Alex Celli called the police, asking them to check on his girlfriend, Christina Carling-Craft, as he was unable to contact her and was on his way home. Christina wasn't answering her calls or texts. Upon arriving home, Alex found the apartment door locked from the inside. He then checked the security system, revealing that someone had opened the front door and the balcony door during the night. The police were called to the address and had to force entry by breaking down the front door, which was locked from the inside. Upon entering the apartment, they were immediately met with signs of a crime scene, including visible blood. A body lay on the bed, covered with a blanket. Lifting the blanket, they found a woman who had been severely beaten. Unfortunately, it was Christina Carling-Craft, and she was already dead. Her body showed signs of blows all over, and her nose was broken. There was also a strangulation mark around her neck. It was later discovered that Christina had been strangled with her own sweatpants. When the detectives identified the victim, they had to break the devastating news to Alex, who was waiting outside. His beloved Christina was dead. This shocking revelation sparked immediate suspicion, as the people closest to the victim are often implicated in such cases. The police did not dismiss the possibility that Alex might be the perpetrator. Alex and Christina had a long history together, and anything could have transpired between them. It was Alex who had contacted the police station, expressing concern for Christina's safety, only for her to be found dead soon after. These events seemed too coincidental. It was possible that Alex had orchestrated the scenario to divert suspicion away from himself. The investigators requested that Alex accompany them to the police station to answer some questions. He agreed without hesitation. During the questioning, Alex explained that he had an urgent work commitment in New York on August 21st and had planned to return. The following night, August 22nd, at 2:30 a.m., he called Christina to bid her good night, but she didn't answer. Given her habitual wakefulness at this hour, Alex grew anxious. He made several more calls, but Christina remained unresponsive. After reviewing the security system, he discovered suspicious activity in the apartment that night, prompting him to relinquish his business and rush back to Ardmore. After hearing Alex's story, the police no longer believed he was responsible for Christina's murder. His alibi checked out, and he couldn't have been in two places at once. They cleared him as a suspect, but the question remained: who killed Christina? Who would want her dead? The investigators looked into Christina's report of a robbery 4 days before her murder, suspecting a connection between the two crimes. This led them to Andre Melton, the thief who stole from Christina's apartment. Maybe he returned to steal again, but his plan was foiled when Christina caught him. Perhaps he discovered she had reported him to the police and decided to take revenge. On August 22nd, the day Christina's body was found, the police obtained an arrest warrant for Andre Melton. When they went to his address, however, they discovered he was no longer there. Despite his absence, they did find some of Christina's belongings still at the location. The police also managed to obtain surveillance footage from the night of the crime, which showed Christina leaving her apartment, then returning a few hours later with an unknown man. The footage was recorded at 3:08 a.m., and surprisingly, the man was not Andre Melton. Further analysis of the footage revealed that the unknown man did not leave Christina's apartment again. The police later found an explanation for this using CCTV cameras on the streets of Ardmore. They discovered that Christina had visited a Philadelphia bar before returning to her apartment. Investigators reviewed the CCTV footage from the bar, which showed Christina meeting a man who later hugged her. This was the same man she had returned to her apartment with. After leaving the bar, Christina and her new friend were involved in an altercation. In the days that followed, detectives worked to reconstruct Christina's movements on the day she died, gathering data to piece together the events leading up to the crime. The police quickly ruled out Melton as a suspect, as he was not with Christina on the day of her death. However, it remained unclear whether her death was connected to the earlier robbery or simply a coincidence. On August 25th, the police received a new lead. Andrew Sanford, the taxi driver who had driven Christina and her companion that night, came forward. According to Sanford, Christina and the man had hailed him down rather than using the taxi app and had negotiated the fare. Sanford reported that the couple seemed affectionate and did not arouse his suspicion. When they arrived at their destination, Christina got out and directed Sanford where to go. It turned out that she didn't have any cash and offered to leave her credit card, but Sanford declined. Her friend then offered him $100 to wait for 10 to 15 minutes while they went inside. Sanford left 20 minutes later, as neither Christina nor her companion had returned. The couple, Christina and Alex, entered their second-floor apartment around 3 a.m. About an hour later, at 4 a.m., Christina made a call to her cousin, but she didn't speak. Instead, her cousin heard a man's voice in the background, warning Christina not to call the police. The call abruptly ended before the cousin could gather more information. It remains unclear why the cousin didn't call 911 after hearing this. The police were able to piece together the crime's timeline thanks to the door sensors in the apartment, which recorded exact times for each door opening. The records showed that someone opened the door at 3:08 a.m. and again at 5:10 a.m. Around the same time, the system detected that someone had opened the sliding glass door on the balcony, which explained why the surveillance cameras didn't capture the moment when the man Christina met at the bar left. When the police arrived after Alex's call, they found Christina alone in the apartment, leading them to assume that the perpetrator had jumped off the balcony. Police sought public's help through media, releasing surveillance images of two men, Andre Melton and the one at Christina's apartment the night she died. In a surprising turn of events, Andre Melton, whose whereabouts were still unknown to the detectives, contacted the police himself. He confessed to stealing valuables from Christina, but vehemently denied any involvement in her murder. The police were perplexed by this unexpected call, as they were still unable to establish a definitive link between the theft and Christina's death. It was possible that this was all part of a strategy devised by the two suspects. It seemed that Melton's intention was not to surrender to the authorities, but to proclaim his innocence in Christina's murder. On August 26th, the police station received an anonymous call from a man who claimed to know one of the suspects featured in the released pictures. He shared a room with the suspect at a psychiatric clinic in Philadelphia. The caller revealed that the suspect had previously chased a woman in Love Park, Philadelphia, and followed her into the local family court building, where he molested her and became aggressive, shouting and causing destruction. The incident led to a 2-hour stay in a psychiatric hospital, costing $70. However, the suspect was admitted without being identified, as no one wanted to deal with him. The police were left with a mystery on their hands. The caller then provided even more critical information, stating that the suspect bragged about recently strangling a woman, taking great pleasure and satisfaction from the act. Upon hearing this, investigators strongly believed that they had found the killer of Christina Carlin Craft. the police station received another call from a man who claimed to be a relative of the suspect from Philadelphia. He identified the man in the photo as Jonathan Wesley Harris, who had previously served a prison sentence for robbery. Harris was released from prison on July 15th, just 5 weeks before Christina's death. After conducting a thorough background check, investigators concluded that Andre Melton and Jonathan Harris had no connection and had never crossed paths before. Therefore, the police ruled out any possibility of a link between the two crimes. Furthermore, the police gained access to Harris's phone records, which revealed that he had sent several messages on August 22nd. One of the texts mentioned that he had met an attractive woman and was planning to visit her apartment on August 28th. With this new evidence, the police obtained an arrest warrant for Jonathan Harris and deemed it crucial to apprehend him as soon as possible, as they were unsure of his next move. However, tracking Harris down proved to be a challenge, as he had left no trace. Investigators finally got a break when they contacted Harris's sister on August 29, 2018, and learned that he had recently purchased a bus ticket to Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, they discovered that Harris was already on the bus when they spoke with his sister. The police realized they wouldn't be able to catch up with him, leaving the Pittsburgh police as their last hope. It was essential to be in the right place at the right time to apprehend Harris. The police investigating Christina's death reached out to the Pittsburgh Law Enforcement Agency for assistance. They provided the exact time of the bus's arrival in Pittsburgh and sent over a photo of Harris. The fugitive task force then set up an ambush, blocking all potential escape routes, ready to apprehend the suspect at a moment's notice. Shortly after, one of the employees spotted the bus approaching. They allowed Harris time to calmly disembark, avoiding any sudden moves that might provoke a reaction. About 10 minutes later, a policeman intercepted him. I saw his eyes scanning, searching for an escape route, but it was too late. According to a Pittsburgh police officer, when the officer asked Harris to identify himself, he provided a false name. He was subsequently arrested and taken into custody at the police station. Detectives from Philadelphia traveled to Pittsburgh to question Harris. They requested that he recount the events of the night he met Christina. Harris claimed to have seen her on multiple occasions at bars and nightclubs in Philadelphia. Christina Carling Craft was struggling to adjust to her new life in New York, which had drastically altered her daily routine and environment. As a result, she would frequently visit bars, cafes, and nightclubs, but she was always by herself since Alex was constantly working and she had not yet formed new friendships. It was common for men at these establishments to approach her, taking advantage of her solo status. Harris was one of those men. Harris claimed he was drunk and high on illegal drugs when he met Christina. They had a drink, then went to her place, where they drank more and had consensual sex. Harris demanded $1,200, but Christina refused, sparking a heated argument. Harris said she hit him with a wine bottle, so he hit her back, causing her to fall. When she tried to call the police, he strangled her with sweatpants until she passed out. Jonathan Harris's story had inconsistencies. A toxicology report on Christina's body found only alcohol, contradicting his claim of a single hit. When confronted, he admitted lying. Initially, Harris denied involvement, but later confessed to beating her, saying, "I panicked," and covering her because he didn't want to see her. When the trial began, Harris, despite having confessed to the crime, pleaded not guilty, like many other criminals who later retract their confessions. However, the investigators had assembled a substantial amount of evidence, making it difficult for Harris and his lawyer to build a strong defense. They anticipated a sentence of 22 to 40 years for third-degree murder and attempted to avoid a life sentence. Nevertheless, the prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence that convinced the court that the crime was premeditated. During the trial, the court heard testimony from a man who had shared a room with Harris at a psychiatric clinic. This same man had previously contacted the police. He revealed that Jonathan Harris had earlier confessed to him, stating, "There's nothing like squeezing somebody and feeling the last breath leave their body." In August 2019, Judge William R. Carpenter sentenced Jonathan Wesley Harris to life in prison without parole, plus an additional 22 to 45 years. The judge added the extra decades to ensure that Harris would never be freed, sending a message to future governors or pardon boards. In December 2018, Philadelphia police arrested Andre Melton for the robbery of Christina Carling Craft's apartment. In March 2020, the court sentenced him to 1 to 4 years in prison, followed by 3 years of consecutive probation, which means Melton will be under court supervision for a total of 7 years. Before learning his fate, Melton said, "I would like to apologize to the family for any grief or pain that I caused. I am not the bad person the district attorney is trying to make me out." Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Zoe Nelson. Zoe Nelson was born on August 13, 1992 in Wishaw, Scotland. At the age of 18, she lived with her mother, stepfather, and 2 younger sisters, including 16-year-old Laura Ann, in New Mains, a village on the eastern edge of Wishaw, about 18 miles southeast of Glasgow. Zoe attended Motherwell College, where she was a popular student with many friends. A complicated romantic situation developed when both Zoe and her sister Laura Ann became involved with the same 20-year-old man, Robert Bain, who lived with his grandparents about a mile from the Nelson family home. Tensions between the sisters increased, leading to conflicts. On May 22, 2010, Zoe met Robert outside her home, which upset Laura Ann. When Laura Ann saw this, she rushed out of the house to confront Zoe. Their 40-year-old mother, Mary Ann Nelson, witnessed the fight between her daughters. According to Mary Ann, Laura Ann tried to provoke Zoe by flicking her hair and attempted to slap her face, leading to a physical altercation at the end of the driveway. Mary Ann intervened, breaking up the fight and telling the sisters to leave and not come back. Zoe complied with her mother's order and never returned home. At around 11 p.m. that same day, some locals spotted someone setting a fire in the wooded area known as Monkey Hill. The smell of smoke drifted to nearby homes, but at the time, no one paid much attention. Zoe's aunt, 35-year-old Shirley Nelson, later remembered that night, describing how she was sitting in her garden in New Mains after finishing her second shift at work. She and her sister sat in the back of the house until about 11 p.m. when it got cooler and they smelled smoke. However, they didn't think anything of it because of the warm weather. The next day, Zoe's family tried to contact her, but no one answered. On the afternoon of May 23rd, Stuart Bell, a 45-year-old government employee from Wishaw, rode his motorcycle into a nearby wooded area and saw something strange. At first, he thought it was a charred tailor's dummy, but upon closer inspection, he realized it was a human body that had been badly damaged in a fire. He immediately went home to call the police, who arrived 15 to 20 minutes later. When the police arrived, they sealed off the area, as nothing so horrific had ever occurred there before. News of the body's discovery quickly spread, and when Zoe's family learned of it, her mother, Mary Ann Nelson, went to the police to report her daughter's disappearance, which had happened after they had fought, and Mary Ann told Zoe not to come home. The police soon broke the devastating news to the Nelson family. Zoe had fallen victim to a crime. Mary Ann issued a statement through the police, describing Zoe as a typical popular 17-year-old with a strong presence in the local community and many friends. In just a couple of months, she would have turned 18. Her family is deeply distraught over her loss. Zoe's stepfather, Daniel, and her sisters, Laura Ann and Ashley, are heartbroken about what happened, and the family is urging anyone with information to come forward and assist the police in their investigation. Hugh Logan, the principal of Motherwell College, where Zoe studied vehicle body repair, expressed shock on behalf of the college community upon learning the dreadful news of her death. He described Zoe as a very popular student and conveyed that the college's thoughts are with her family and friends. A thorough investigation of the scene spanned several days, with a team of at least 50 police officers working on the case. Detective Derek Robertson, part of the main investigation team, lamented the loss of Zoe's young life and vowed that his officers would not rest until the perpetrator was caught. He urged anyone who saw Zoe between 5 p.m. and 11:20 p.m. on Saturday night to come forward and assist the investigation. Robertson noted that, given the area's popularity on the hottest day of the year, numerous people would have been taking shortcuts and sunbathing, and that the police were particularly interested in speaking with those who may have used the dirt trails, including one that crossed near the location where Zoe's body was found. Zoe was about 5 feet 6 inches tall, with a heavy build and collar-length brown hair. At the time she went missing, she was wearing gray tracksuit bottoms, a white long-sleeved top, and black Nike trainers. The detectives have been reviewing CCTV footage, phone records, and computer data, as well as conducting door-to-door inquiries and speaking to Zoe's friends and family to try to recreate her last movements on May 26th. The police released video footage from a local shop where Zoe was seen just hours before she died. These small details were crucial to the investigation, as they helped the police trace Zoe's movements and ultimately led to the arrest of the person responsible for her death. After examining the crime scene, investigators found a red plastic sombrero-shaped cap from a Sierra Silver tequila bottle near the body and an empty bottle of the same brand on the other side of a small walkway nearby. Due to the body being exposed to fire for approximately 7 hours, forensic experts faced limitations in determining the exact cause of death. The body was discovered with a partially melted plastic bag covering most of the face, leading pathologists to conclude that asphyxiation was the most likely cause of death. Despite the damage, the palm of the right hand remained relatively intact, allowing 2 DNA samples to be collected, one matching Zoe Nelson herself, and the other belonging to an unidentified male. Ultimately, the official cause of death was recorded as undetermined. By May 28th, police had gathered several witness statements that provided a disturbing account of Zoe's last days. One witness reported seeing Zoe with a heavily intoxicated and aggressive man at around 5:15 p.m. on May 22nd, who was hitting her on the head. Another witness claimed to have seen Zoe walking with a man with a tattooed face near his home in New Mains. A third witness described seeing Zoe with a similar-looking man in New Mains, who appeared angry, hit a lamppost, and threatened to take someone's life that night. Multiple witnesses came forward, all describing the same young man, 20-year-old Robert Bain. Notably, Robert Bain had a prior criminal record despite his youth. He had served 18 months in prison for robbery and was released just 7 weeks before Zoe's death. Additionally, he had been arrested 4 times for possessing illegal substances, though as a juvenile, he faced minimal consequences. Investigators started to view Robert Bain as a prime suspect in the case. Before they could take further action, Bain surprisingly turned up at the police station in Wishaw around 5:50 p.m. on May 28th. He was clearly intoxicated, slurring his words, and wanted to make a statement. Bain claimed that a few days prior, he had been in Motherwell, where he got on a bus to return home. During the journey, he said, a man named Stuart Campbell boarded the same bus. Bain alleged that he approached Campbell and asked if he had been with Zoe on the previous Saturday night. According to Bain, Campbell's response was incriminating. Yes, I took her life. This was the first mention of Stuart Campbell's name during the entire investigation, whereas Robert Bain's name had come up repeatedly. As a result, the police arrested Bain on the same day. A strong justification for Robert Bain's arrest would emerge during his trial. At the time of his arrest, Bain claimed to have last seen Zoe on the morning in May. However, forensic tests revealed incriminating evidence against him. A DNA sample from Zoe Nelson's hand revealed not only her own DNA, but also traces of another person's DNA, which matched part of Bain's DNA profile. Additionally, DNA evidence found on a tequila bottle and its cap, discovered near Zoe's body, matched both Zoe Nelson and Robert Bain. According to the forensic expert, this suggested that both individuals had consumed from the bottle and then replaced the cap. Expert Marie Campbell stated that the scientific findings indicated that Robert Bain's DNA was deposited between Zoe Nelson's fingers and on her right palm. The chances of the DNA found on the red plastic sombrero lid belonging to anyone other than Robert Bain were an astonishing 10 million to 1. Robert Bain was accused of being involved in Zoe Nelson's death due to multiple eyewitness accounts and DNA evidence. Despite this, he pleaded not guilty and acted defiantly, even confronting one of the investigators. He also denied an earlier alleged assault on Zoe, where a witness claimed he struck her on the head with his fist. Hundreds attended Zoe Nelson's funeral at Courtness Memorial Church on June 16, 2010. She was laid to rest at Campus Natan Cemetery. Over 200 mourners, including her mother, sisters, and grandmother, gathered to pay their respects. Reverend Graham Rayburn led the service, noting the large turnout as a testament to Zoe's significant impact. He described her as a happy, cheerful teenager with a big heart who loved fast cars and rangers. Sadly, she never met her newborn nephew or got to contact her biological father. On March 1, 2011, Robert Bain's trial began, during which he maintained his innocence. Testifying in court, Zoe Nelson's teenage friends recalled a conversation they had with her a week before her death, in which she attributed her scratches and bruises to a fight with Robert Bain. According to her friends, Zoe described Bain as bossy, unstable, and prone to anger over minor issues. He also controlled her social circle, dictating which friends she could see. Although Zoe and Bain's relationship was relatively short-lived, given he had only been out of prison for 2 months, he exerted significant influence over her and also pursued a relationship with her 16-year-old sister, Laura Ann. Notably, Laura Ann was aware of her sister's death 5 days before the body was discovered by a passerby, but kept this secret until the trial, where it was revealed that Bain had taken Laura Ann to the location of Zoe's body. Laura Ann, who testified from behind a screen to avoid seeing Bain, recounted that on May 23rd, the day after her argument with Zoe, she visited Bain's address to return some clothes. Upon arrival, she observed that Robert seemed nervous and had been consuming vodka. They soon left the house, with Bain claiming he wanted to show her something. According to Laura Ann, he led her to the location where Zoe's body lay. Recognizing the ranger's tattoo on her arm, Laura Ann identified the body as her sister. During court questioning, Laura Ann stated that Bain had confessed to hitting Zoe, and when Zoe attempted to retaliate, he lost control and took her life. Bain then allegedly used gasoline in an attempt to eliminate any evidence of the crime. Laura Ann confessed to walking with Bain on the day following the discovery of the body. Afterwards, she visited his home, spending time in his bedroom, where they listened to music together. She also had a phone conversation with him that lasted around an hour. A friend of Laura Ann, who testified in court, recalled that Laura Ann seemed happy and normal, despite knowing her sister was dead. When questioned about why she didn't reveal everything to the police during her initial interrogation, Laura Ann explained that she was afraid that if she told them, her mother wouldn't believe her and would think she was responsible for Zoe's death. The jury heard testimony from Laura Ann Nelson, who stated that Robert Bain had threatened her, saying she would face the same consequences as Zoe if she told anyone about his actions. On March 25, 2011, a jury of 7 men and 7 women delivered a unanimous guilty verdict. As the verdict was read, Bain became violent, requiring physical restraint. Handcuffed, he jumped up in the dock, struggling with security officers and police, and headbutting one of them. He also shouted insults and threats at Zoe Nelson's family, forcing the courtroom to be cleared while order was restored. After a 20-minute adjournment, Judge Lady Dorian agreed to proceed with the trial in Bain's absence. In a separate matter, Robert Bain was acquitted of stealing alcohol from an Asda store in New Mains on May 22nd, as well as disorderly conduct related to yelling, cursing, and waving a knife in various streets in Wishaw on the same day. Bain was also acquitted of stealing Zoe's cell phone, which was found in the woods, and of threatening a police officer during an interview at the Motherwell police station on May 28th. On April 27, 2011, Robert Bain was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 20 years for taking the life of Zoe Nelson. He received another 6 years for the obstruction of justice charge, and both sentences were to be served concurrently. The judge, Lady Dorian, described the crime as appalling and shocking. On Christmas Eve 2022, 29-year-old Laura Ann Nelson was found dead in her apartment after not being heard from for days. She was left with 2 children, ages 3 and 4. Her death was not considered criminal, as she had health problems, namely type 1 diabetes. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sierra Breland. The disappearance of 31-year-old Sierra Breland, an Indiana lawyer from Cleveland, Georgia. The last time she was seen was on February 24, 2022 at 7:17 p.m. when a surveillance camera captured her outside her mother-in-law's home in Johns Creek. Despite extensive efforts by the police and her family, Sierra's whereabouts and what happened to her remain unknown. Sierra was a cheerful and ambitious woman, according to her mother Kelly. She was determined to be taken seriously, so she worked hard to become a lawyer, following in her mother's footsteps as a paralegal. Growing up in Georgia, Sierra dreamed of living in Atlanta one day. To achieve this goal, she attended the University of Tennessee for college, and then Florida State University for law school. Kelly said Sierra was happy, energetic, loving, and extremely driven in her career. In October 2020, Sierra met Xavier Breland on Tinder, and their relationship quickly developed. 6 months later, the couple got married, and Sierra became pregnant. According to court records, Sierra provided legal assistance to Xavier in his dispute with his ex-wife. The newlyweds decided to start a new life in Carmel, Indiana, where Sierra got a job at a law firm. In 2021, she gave birth to a son named Jackson. Xavier and Sierra appeared to be a perfect couple from the outside, but their relationship was plagued by issues from the early stages. According to Shelby Campbell, Sierra's cousin, the problems between them surfaced shortly after their initial dates. Sierra had told Xavier she wanted no further contact, but he refused to accept rejection. Instead, he began showing up uninvited at her apartment, sitting outside her door. He also sent her threatening messages after seeing her with another man. Sierra warned him she would involve the authorities if he persisted. Despite this, she eventually gave him another chance, and 6 months later, they got married. Shelby and Sierra were inseparable, exchanging daily texts. Sierra confided in her, revealing her fears about her husband. In one message, she wrote, "I'm really struggling to cope with this. I don't want to give up on someone I love and abandon our family, but his behavior is getting worse, not better. It makes me wonder what the future holds. He used to feel guilty when he said hurtful things, but lately he doesn't even apologize. He blames me, saying I did this because you made me." Sierra feared that if something happened to her, her husband would be to blame. Shelby claims that she frequently advised Sierra to leave her husband, but Sierra understood the importance of planning her exit carefully. The text messages Shelby shared only provide a glimpse into the situation between Sierra and her husband. Sierra did call the police on multiple occasions, and law enforcement responded to her residence in both Georgia and Indiana multiple times. According to Campbell, by the time the police arrived, Sierra would have calmed down enough to cover for her husband, denying any abuse. Shelby revealed that an investigator even contacted Sierra's mother after one of these incidents, telling her that he knew Sierra was lying about the abuse when she called 911. The investigator had seen this pattern before and was worried that something terrible might happen to Sierra. Sierra was determined to leave her husband Xavier and had been secretly building up a bank account to prepare for her independence. Despite sending messages to Xavier claiming she loved him, she had reached the conclusion that she couldn't afford to stay in the troubled relationship. Aware of their daughter's difficulties, Sierra's parents, Kelly and Nick, encouraged her to break free from Xavier and promised her a safe haven back at home if she needed it. Sierra's decisive trip to Georgia began when she and Xavier packed up their baby and large dog into a 2017 white Volkswagen Tiguan for the 11-hour drive south. According to her family, Sierra arrived at her parents' house on February 19th, where she spent the night reconnecting with relatives she hadn't seen since moving to Indiana. Although it seemed like a brief visit, Sierra had made up her mind not to return to Indiana, marking a new chapter in her life. Xavier was interested in this trip because his mother lived in Georgia, just like Sierra's mother. However, Xavier didn't know that Sierra didn't plan to return to Indiana. Sierra had told her mother that she was going to find a job in Georgia and that she was getting a divorce due to her husband's increasing abusive behavior. On Saturday, February 19th, Sierra arrived at her parents' house in Cleveland, Georgia, where she spent the night. She reassured them that she wanted a divorce and wouldn't return to Indiana. On Sunday, February 20th, Sierra left her parents' house to pick up her son, Jackson, from her mother-in-law's house in Johns Creek, Georgia, about an hour away. Before leaving, Sierra sent a text to her cousin, Shelby Campbell, saying, "I'm at Xavier's mom's house. He won't give me Jackson, so I'm waiting to get him so I can leave." On Monday, February 21st, at 11:17 p.m., Sierra sent a text to her father, Nick, saying, "I'll be back in the morning if that's okay." Nick responded the next day, telling her it was okay and that she didn't have to ask. When Nick didn't hear back from Sierra, he reached out to her again. She replied that everything was okay and that she had been feeling a bit sick. Nick contacted her again on Wednesday to ask if she was feeling better, but he didn't receive a response. He sent another text on Thursday, February 24th, but there was still no response. By Friday, Sierra's loved ones were getting concerned because she hadn't responded, which was out of character for her. On the evening of Saturday, February 26th, Nick received a call from an unknown number based in Indiana. Initially, Nick didn't panic, assuming Sierra was still in Georgia, so he answered the call. The caller claimed to be a police officer and broke the news that Sierra had been reported missing. Apparently, her husband, Xavier, had filed a missing persons report. This revelation left the family in shock, as they had been under the impression that Sierra was still in Georgia, despite her uncharacteristic silence. What's especially puzzling, according to Shelby Campbell, is that Xavier never reached out to anyone to check on Sierra's whereabouts. He didn't call or notify anyone, which made the situation even more baffling. After speaking with the Carmel police, Sierra's father decided to call Xavier. In their conversation, Sierra's father pressured Xavier to tell the truth, reminding him that Sierra had warned her family that Xavier would be responsible if anything happened to her. Xavier responded by telling him to go to hell and then hung up the phone. After Nick called Xavier's father, who lived next to Sierra and Xavier in Carmel, the father claimed he never saw her. This was confirmed by a press release from the Carmel Police Department in Indiana on March 2nd. Xavier Breland had earlier reported Sierra missing to the police department on Saturday, February 26, 2022. During their investigation, detectives discovered a video recording that showed Sierra's last known location, her mother-in-law's house in Georgia, on February 24th at 7:07 p.m. According to the Carmel Police Department's official report, nothing unusual happened in the video. On February 25th, Sierra left her home in the Brookstone Park subdivision in Carmel, Indiana, around 1 p.m. to walk to a nearby store. At the time, she was wearing a black top and purple shorts, and the temperature was around 20 degrees. However, police reported that she never arrived at the store, and there was no surveillance video of her entering the store. Sierra's family was concerned when she vanished, leaving behind 3 phones, ID, and credit cards. They knew she'd never leave without telling them, especially not her 5-month-old son. Her mom, Kelly, revealed Sierra had confided in her about financial struggles and alleged abuse from her husband, who used their child to control her. Kelly was adamant Sierra wouldn't abandon her son, believing she'd be dead before doing so. On February 28, 2022, 2 days after reporting his wife Sierra missing, Xavier had an unexpected visit from the police at his doorstep. According to court documents, there was an accidental discharge of a firearm at a residence on Baldwin Lane. Xavier claimed to have been moving a Christmas tree in the garage when he heard the gunshot, prompting him to run outside. He then returned to the garage, found the gun, and unloaded it before calling the police to report the incident himself. The investigation revealed that there were 2 guns in his house. However, the police did not reveal whether they found any evidence linking Xavier to Sierra's disappearance. Nevertheless, it soon came to light that Xavier had a criminal past, having been convicted of felony burglary charges in 2005. It was also suspicious that Xavier waited a day to report his wife missing, claiming she had not returned home from a trip to the store. A few days after the police received the missing person report, Xavier was identified as a person of interest in his wife's disappearance. He was arrested on an unrelated charge due to an outstanding warrant for aggravated stalking in Coeur County. He was extradited to Georgia to face those charges. Court records show that Xavier had previously placed a tracking device inside a stuffed animal belonging to his daughter to track her mother, his ex-wife, as part of a custody battle between the former couple. On Friday, 2 weeks after Sierra's disappearance, a search operation was conducted in several neighborhoods in Johns Creek, involving police, volunteers, family, and friends. The main areas of focus were 2 neighborhoods along Medlock Bridge Road, which police believed Sierra might have passed through during her stay in Georgia. The search efforts included distributing flyers and setting up electronic signs at 2 locations along Kimball Bridge Road, seeking the public's assistance. The Johns Creek Police Department also contacted several commercial electronic sign companies to display Sierra's photo and information across Metro Atlanta. The family requested anyone who saw a white 2017 Volkswagen Tiguan with Georgia license plate RMB 51869, which had a university law school frame around the plate, to contact the police. The vehicle was searched for evidence by forensic investigators and subsequently released. As Sierra was last seen at her mother-in-law's house in Georgia, police suspected that her disappearance might be linked to something that occurred at this location. Police traced the route Xavier took back to Indiana, but were unable to confirm whether Sierra was in the car. Notably, Xavier was the only person who got out of the white Volkswagen at gas stations and shops. The level of cooperation from Xavier's mother during the investigation remains unclear, but law enforcement officials confirmed that evidence was collected from the residence through a search warrant as part of their investigation. Johns Creek investigators, including forensic experts and cadaver dogs, searched the area for signs of a struggle or clues to the couple's disappearance. Despite a K9 unit's involvement, no scent trail was found, and gathered evidence remains undisclosed due to the ongoing investigation. Xavier Breland was arrested in Georgia on March 16, 2022, for aggravated stalking. This stemmed from a 2021 incident where he hid a tracking device to stalk the mother of his child, who had a restraining order against him. He was later found not guilty, but arrested again and extradited to Indiana for unlawful possession of a firearm. Xavier Breland asked a judge to lower his bond to an affordable amount for his mother. The court initially set it at $35,000, but prosecutors requested $50,000. After Breland appealed, the judge set it at $100,000. He was released in February 2023 after posting bail. Sierra's disappearance remains a mystery despite extensive searches. She was last seen at a store and investigations have pinpointed several potential locations. The vast search area spans millions of acres of state and federal land, parks, and undeveloped areas in Georgia, plus thousands of acres of railroad and utility easements. According to Kelly Breland, law enforcement has gathered evidence and statements from multiple states, but these are like puzzle pieces without a complete picture. Some items were removed from Xavier's mother's home, as revealed in court documents related to a civil case filed by Xavier's mother against Xavier's sister. As part of their search, crime scene investigators cut and removed the carpet and mattress from Xavier's mother's home on April 21, 2022, according to documents from the familial civil dispute. After Xavier Breland's arrest on March 1st, 5-month-old Jackson was placed into state care. Since then, Jackson's grandparents, Nick and Kelly Miller, have been able to be with the infant and are working to bring the baby back home to Georgia. Past year, numerous searches focused on specific areas, but no leads on the new mom's disappearance. Police reconstruct events, distribute flyers, and use electronic signs to raise awareness. Sierra, 5'7", 120 pounds, blonde hair with distinct tattoos. She was last seen in a white 2017 VW Tiguan with GA plate RMB 5869. If seen in Feb, contact authorities. Xavier is the only person of interest that police have publicly named in connection with Sierra's disappearance. But so far, no charges have been filed against him. Despite this, Sierra's family remains convinced that Xavier knows what happened to her and is the only one who can provide the answers they need to bring closure and allow Sierra to rest in peace. Kelly Breland, a family member, believes that Sierra's body might be located in one of 4 states: Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, or Indiana. She is appealing to outdoorsmen and fishermen in these states to be vigilant and report any information they might have to the authorities. In a separate development, Sierra's parents have been granted custody of the couple's child. It's worth noting that Xavier Breland was previously arrested and released on bail for illegal possession of firearms. His trial was set to take place on December 28, 2023, but he failed to appear in court, and his current whereabouts are unknown. As a result, a rearrest warrant has been issued, and law enforcement is working to track him down. This recent development adds another layer of complexity to the already puzzling case of Sierra's disappearance. Xavier Breland, a 6'1" tall, 160-pound black man with brown hair and green eyes, has gone missing. There is a warrant out for his arrest, and the FBI has joined the search for the missing woman, Sierra, whose body has not been found. The disappearances of both Xavier and Sierra have raised many unanswered questions. Sierra's mother, Kelly Breland, believes her daughter was afraid of Xavier and did not plan to return to Indiana with him. With both individuals now missing, the case has become even more urgent. The trial related to Xavier's gun charge has been postponed multiple times. Law enforcement and Sierra's family are now seeking the public's help in finding Xavier and Sierra, hoping to shed light on the mysterious circumstances surrounding their disappearances. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Marilyn Levesque. In the year 2020, the body of 22-year-old Marilyn Levesque was discovered with multiple stab wounds, sparking a massive public outcry. The community was outraged, demanding that Canadian authorities provide an explanation for how such a heinous crime could have occurred. Marilyn was born in 1997 in Chicoutimi, Quebec, to Karine Levesque and François Goulet, who separated soon after her birth. Those close to her described her as kind, outgoing, and always friendly. Marilyn grew up partly with her mother and partly in foster homes. She left her hometown for Quebec City at the age of 17 and returned after a breakup with her boyfriend. From then on, she commuted between the two cities, working in Quebec City 2 or 3 days a week and taking the bus or carpool services since she didn't have a driver's license. By early 2020, Marilyn was living with her new boyfriend, Gabriel Truchon, in the Chicoutimi district, about 130 miles from Quebec City. Gabriel said Marilyn dreamed of a stable life and wanted to pursue a career in architecture. Tragically, on January 22, 2020, everything changed. Marilyn was in Quebec City for work, while Gabriel stayed in Chicoutimi. At around 9 p.m., Gabriel became worried when he couldn't reach Marilyn after several attempts to contact her. He then texted her co-workers, hoping someone had seen her. Soon, Gabriel received a call from an unknown number. The caller, identifying himself as a police officer, told Gabriel that Marilyn had been found dead. Forensic experts later determined that she died from multiple stab wounds, with more than 50 wounds on her body. To continue with Marilyn's story, let's go back 17 years. In 2003, Chantal Dechaine, a 32-year-old bartender at a Quebec hotel, met Eustachio Gallès, her 36-year-old boss, who oversaw the hotel's guest meals. Soon after, Chantal and Eustachio started a passionate romance. At the time, Chantal was a single mother of 2 girls, aged 10 and 6, whose fathers she had not lived with for several years. Eustachio, on the other hand, had been married to Joanne Lafront since 1996 and had 3 children with her. Their relationship was tumultuous, marked by instances of physical violence. For instance, Eustachio would occasionally smash walls in their home during fits of anger. On one occasion, while traveling through Ottawa, he assaulted his wife and was arrested, spending 7 days in jail. Despite these incidents and other forms of verbal abuse, Joanne Lafront claimed she wasn't afraid of her husband, describing him as a good father to their children, although his demanding job often kept him from spending time with the family. When Eustachio began his romance with Chantal, he left his wife Joanne and their 3 children to move in with his new love. The whirlwind relationship was soon formalized, and Chantal and Eustachio got married. At first, everything seemed perfect for the couple, as is often the case. Eustachio got along great with Chantal's kids, and they spent their weekends together, going to the movies, skating, and enjoying other activities. However, the relationship began to unravel as quickly as it had started. Meanwhile, Eustachio was working over 60 hours a week as the food and beverage manager at the hotel. He warned his supervisors he would quit on December 31, 2004, due to the unbearable job pressures, but he didn't confide in his employer about his personal struggles. Eustachio Gallès and Chantal Dechaine had a highly complex and often volatile relationship. According to recent accounts from witnesses, Gallès was intensely jealous, while others claimed that both partners were possessive and frequently argued about it. Friends close to the couple revealed that Gallès would sometimes shout, but never physically harmed Chen, who would often retaliate by insulting or even slapping him. The tension in the relationship climaxed on October 21, 2004. That morning, Eustachio and Chantal returned home after a night shift at the hotel. Chantal's 2 daughters were still asleep, having spent the evening with Joanie Heon, their babysitter, who slept over at their house because their mother worked the night shift. From the couple's conversation, Joanie learned of the night's argument between them. The babysitter left the house around 7:15 a.m., and the children were supposed to go to school around 8 a.m. Before leaving for school, the girls went in to greet their mother, who was in the bedroom with Eustachio. It was the last time they saw their mother alive. At 1:29 p.m., Eustachio Gallès went to his ex-wife Joanna Lafrance's home to drop off his cash savings. While there, he called the police and confessed to killing his wife, Chantal. 10 minutes later, at 1:39 p.m., the police arrived at Joanna's home, where Gallès repeated his confession and surrendered. Gallès urged the police to hurry to the school before Chantal's 2 daughters returned home and discovered their mother's body. Meanwhile, the police went to Chantal's home, where they found her bloody body on the bed in her bedroom. Next to the body, they found 2 blood-stained knives and a broken hammer. An autopsy revealed that Chantal died from multiple hammer blows and stab wounds. The hammer blows were so brutal that the handle broke. In 2006, a jury found Gallès guilty of second-degree murder during his trial. He admitted that he killed Chantal because she had decided to leave him. Kaiser was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Kaiser had a history of violent behavior towards his partners. In 1997, he was jailed for 7 days for assaulting his first wife, Joanne LaFrance. Tragically, he went on to kill his second wife, Chantal Dechaine, in 2004. This pattern of behavior suggests that Kaiser had a tendency to abuse women. Despite this disturbing history, the parole board to release him in March 2019, concluding that his risk of reoffending was low. As a condition of his parole, Kaiser was permitted to date women to meet his sexual needs, but with strict limitations. His parole officer set rules for his interactions with women, allowing him to visit an erotic massage parlor once a month, but prohibiting romantic relationships. Additionally, he was required to observe a curfew between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. unless attending an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. However, Kaiser struggled to abide by these rules, frequently visiting the massage parlor several times a week instead of just once a month. In March 2019, Kaiser was released. Later, in June, the 51-year-old visited an erotic massage parlor where he met 22-year-old Marilyn Levesque, an employee. Although Marilyn's family knew she earned a living by providing intimate services, she rarely discussed it with them, and when she did, it was often in a light-hearted or joking manner. Those close to her described her as sensitive. However, she had become rigid about her job, and her relatives believed part of her wanted to change her life and quit. Yet, it's not easy to revert to minimum wage after becoming accustomed to earning the equivalent of 2 weeks' work in just 2 hours. How did Marilyn end up in prostitution? The circumstances are unclear, but one thing is certain: her childhood was difficult. She was placed in foster homes repeatedly. Marilyn's boyfriend and close friends were aware of her workplace and the nature of her job. According to a friend, Marilyn didn't have conflicting feelings about her profession. She openly discussed it without pride or shame. Since she worked in Quebec, 100 miles from their home, her boyfriend didn't object to her occupation. Kaiser, who was largely left to his own devices, began visiting a massage parlor multiple times a week. Although he seemed reformed to the parole board, his fundamental nature remained unchanged. On several occasions, he became violent towards female employees, resulting in him being banned from the establishment. Unbeknownst to the staff, Kaiser was a convicted criminal who had served time in prison for murdering his wife. In late summer 2019, when it was discovered that Kaiser had assaulted multiple women at a massage parlor, the parole board prohibited him from visiting erotic massage parlors, warning him that he would face imprisonment if he didn't comply. However, by then, Kaiser had developed romantic feelings for Marilyn and found a way to bypass the rules. He offered her $1,300 Canadian to meet him in a hotel room, which she accepted. This was their first encounter outside of a massage parlor, and it happened without any issues. Kaiser felt deeply sympathetic towards Marilyn, so he started opening up to her about his emotional struggles. He shared with her how much he still missed his late wife, whom he had mourned for 15 years, but he didn't reveal that he was responsible for her death. After this, Kaiser began to sense that Marilyn was distancing herself from him, and their connection was deteriorating. He felt rejected, which sparked anxiety and jealousy within him. Kaiser scheduled another hotel meeting with Marilyn for January 22, 2020. Marilyn told her boyfriend that she generally avoided hotel meetings, preferring massage parlors instead, as they had guards to protect the workers from potential issues and to escort troublesome clients out. However, the attractive offer of $2,000 convinced Marilyn to agree to another hotel meeting. Around 8:30 p.m., after dinner, the couple went to their hotel room. At 11:35 p.m., Kaiser arrived at the police station and, similar to his 2004 case, confessed to murdering Marilyn. The police rushed to the hotel, hoping to find Marilyn still alive. Unfortunately, she had already been killed. The autopsy revealed 57 stab wounds on her body. It was determined that Galice had spent about 2 hours at a bar before surrendering to the police, during which time he got rid of the murder weapon and Marilene's cell phone. A terrible event occurred, but it was made even more distressing by the perpetrator's identity, past, and the circumstances surrounding his latest atrocity, sparking widespread outrage and demands for answers from the authorities. Bill Blair, the Secretary of Public Safety, expressed his condolences to Marilene's family and stated that her death was preventable. Quebec Justice Minister Sonia Lebel sought an explanation for how a violent criminal like Galice was granted parole and questioned whether the officers involved had sufficient training to assess public safety risks. She also called on Federal Public Safety Minister Bill Blair to investigate the situation. An investigation commission was established to examine the parole board's actions and found deficiencies in their work, case management, and supervision of the offender. The head of the Correctional Service of Canada described Marilene's death as a terrible tragedy that should never have occurred, promising that the Correctional Service of Canada, in collaboration with the parole board, would take significant steps to prevent similar incidents in the future. Despite the high-profile comments, no one faced serious punishment in the end. Some staff members from the parole board were reassigned to different roles, while others were sent for additional training. Unfortunately, there is no way to bring back the young woman who lost her life. It is hoped that her tragic death will make decision-makers think twice about the serious consequences of their actions. As part of a settlement agreement between the authorities and the victim's family, the government provided compensation for her death, which prevented a lawsuit from being filed by her relatives. The amount of compensation remains undisclosed due to confidentiality agreements. It's worth noting that some people even blamed the victim for her own death because of her profession. Galice was initially charged with second-degree murder, but the charge was upgraded to first-degree murder after it was revealed that he had planned the crime in advance and purchased the knife beforehand. Galice admitted his guilt, confessing that he had deliberately planned the murder. During his trial in February 2020, the prosecutor argued that Galice's motivation for the crime was jealousy, resulting from his realization that Marilene was using him for financial gain. On February 27, 2020, the 51-year-old Eustacio Galice was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. This time, he will be eligible to apply for parole, but not until he has served 25 years, unlike the 15-year requirement following the murder of his wife. Do you think Galice will be released again if he lives to be 76 years old? Share your thoughts. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Agustina Imvinkelried. Agustina was born on June 6, 2001, in Esperanza. Agustina lived with her large family, and as the youngest of 5 children, received special treatment. People described Agustina as friendly, kind, and always smiling. Like many young people, she enjoyed going to the movies, bowling, discos, and playing the ukulele with her friends. Esperanza is a small town of around 40,000 residents, where everyone tends to know each other. The limited entertainment options led to the town's young people frequently running into and knowing one another. On the afternoon of January 12, 2019, Agustina's father dropped her off at a friend's house, where a group of 6 planned to gather. The girls had arranged to visit a nightclub and bowling center called Teos together. Agustina told her father she would spend the night at a friend's house. After leaving the club, Agustina sent a message to her boyfriend, Nahuel, asking him to join her, but he declined, saying he was tired. At the club, Agustina and her friends were having a blast, dancing and enjoying the music. By 5 a.m., they decided it was time to head out, but Agustina ran into another group of friends and decided to stick around for a bit longer. A surveillance camera captured her leaving the venue at 5:40 a.m., carrying her cell phone. After leaving the club, Agostina stopped by a fast food stand, waited in line, chatted with an acquaintance, and then headed towards the road. Normally, Agostina's parents knew her whereabouts because she always kept them informed. However, when morning arrived and they didn't receive a text from her saying she had made it to her friend's house safely, they grew concerned and tried to reach her. But her phone was unavailable. Her friend told the worried parents that Agostina hadn't returned from the club. Agostina's parents then contacted all her acquaintances, but no one knew where she might be. As a result, Agostina's father called the police and began searching for his daughter on his own. Daniel Rinklevery, a well-known local figure and president of the town's soccer club, was also the owner of a small furniture manufacturing and sales company. When news broke that he was in distress, many townspeople volunteered to help with the search for his missing niece, Agostina. Agostina's friends turned to social media to spread the word about her disappearance, which eventually caught the attention of television news programs. As a result, the police launched an investigation, focusing on Teo's club, the last place Agostina was seen. They interviewed potential witnesses and reviewed surveillance footage, which showed Agostina walking towards the road, but didn't provide any further leads. The police then broadened their search, questioning residents living along the road and staff from nearby businesses. They hoped someone might have seen or heard something, no matter how insignificant, that could serve as a clue to Agostina's whereabouts. Brian, a friend of Agostina's, heard about her disappearance on social media. He saw the many posts about finding her and got in touch with her father, Daniel. Brian told Daniel that he had seen Agostina outside Teo's club at around 6 a.m. He was driving by and noticed her standing on the side of the road, talking to the driver of a silver car that had pulled over next to her. This was a few hundred meters from the club. Brian drove on, but quickly pulled out his phone and called Agostina to check on her. He asked if she was okay and if she needed a ride home. Agostina told him she was fine, and that the man driving the silver car had stopped to warn her that the road wasn't safe to walk on because of the risk of being hit by traffic. She accepted Brian's offer of a ride, saying she was on her way to a friend's house. Brian then turned his car around and headed back towards Teo's club. When he arrived, Agostina was no longer there, and neither was the silver car. Assuming she had gone with the driver, Brian continued to try calling her, but she did not answer. Concerned, he drove to the friend's house she had mentioned, but there was no sign of her. He continued to check his phone for updates, hoping to hear from her or see her posting on social media. After learning about Agostina's disappearance and the discovery of her body, Brian shared crucial information with the police, providing a potential lead on the silver car and its driver. This testimony added vital details to the timeline, helping investigators reconstruct Agostina's final moments. Brian had stopped at a nearby gas station, about a few hundred meters from where he last saw Agostina, to wait for her and fill up his car. When Agostina failed to show up 15 minutes later, Brian went to look for her but couldn't find her. His attempts to contact her were also unsuccessful, as she didn't answer. At the time, he didn't think much of it, assuming Agostina had gone directly to her friend's house and forgotten about their meeting. The primary clue in the investigation was the silver car. Although Brian couldn't identify the exact brand and model, he recalled it was an older vehicle. The driver might have been the last person to see Agostina, and it was possible that he was linked to her disappearance. When the police attempted to track Agostina's cell phone, they found that the last signal it transmitted was received by a tower located in the same neighborhood as Teo's club. Since the club was situated on the outskirts of town, surrounded by numerous vacant lots and fields, the search teams focused their search efforts in these areas. Of all the organizations along the road Agostina was walking on, only this particular gas station had installed surveillance cameras. Daniel suspected that Agostina might have passed by the gas station, given its proximity to her friend's house, and so he went there to review the footage and see if it had captured his daughter. The gas station attendant, a fellow father, sympathized with Daniel's concern and showed him the recording from that morning, which almost resulted in the attendant losing his job, as it was against the rules to share the footage with unauthorized individuals. The gas station owner was furious when he found out and fired the attendant on the spot. However, when the townspeople heard what had happened, they boycotted the gas station, taking their business elsewhere. This backlash forced the gas station owner to reconsider, and he eventually rehired the attendant, apologizing to him publicly in front of Esperanza. Daniel reviewed the gas station's camera footage, but didn't find his daughter on it. It seemed Agustina never made it there. However, the footage did show the same old silver Renault car Brian had described earlier. It drove past the gas station around the time Agustina was walking along the road. Daniel identified the car's owner as 39-year-old Pablo Trionfini, a municipal garbage collector who lived less than a kilometer away. Although he had no prior criminal record, Trionfini had caught the police's attention before. In 2017, his ex-wife reported him for domestic abuse, which led to a court order prohibiting him from contacting her. He was arrested again that year for violating that order. Not long after Daniel viewed the gas station's security footage, police officers arrived, unaware that Agustina's father had already seen it. They viewed the surveillance video and recognized the silver car. However, when they discovered that Daniel had seen the video before them, they feared a lynching might occur and rushed to Pablo Trionfini's house. Upon arrival, they found a crowd gathered in front of the house, shouting, "Where is Agustina?" The crowd dispersed when the police arrived, and one of the onlookers told the officers that Trionfini was inside. He had peeked out after hearing the shouting but fled back into the house and bolted the door when he saw the hostile crowd. Lacking probable cause for an unauthorized entry, the officers requested a search warrant. While waiting, they cordoned off the house to prevent Trionfini's escape. Around midnight, an officer decided to investigate the yard and found Pablo Trionfini deceased. The police rushed to help, but it was too late. Trionfini's death implicated him in Agustina's disappearance, but a search of his house and car yielded no evidence. By taking his own life, Trionfini had avoided further trouble and consequences. As the police were searching the house, Trionfini's neighbor approached them and said that Pablo had dropped by during the day and asked to borrow a shovel, allegedly to dig for some earthworms because he was going fishing. A half hour later, he returned the shovel and said something that struck the neighbor as very odd. Witnesses saw Trionfini leave the house several times on Sunday, riding his bicycle while holding a shovel. This possibly meant that Agustina was no longer among the living. On Monday, January 14, 2019, a search began at daybreak with the aid of drones and police dogs. At 9:15 a.m., Agustina's half-stripped body was discovered approximately 500 meters away from Teo's club. It had been concealed in a ditch covered with dense vegetation. The forensic examination showed that Agustina had fought desperately for her life. Her hands had defensive wounds, and pieces of her attacker's skin were found under her fingernails. DNA analysis verified that the man who assaulted Agustina was Pablo Trionfini. Forensics ruled the cause of death as strangulation. The exact circumstances of how Agustina ended up in Pablo Trionfini's car remain a mystery. Did he force her in, or did he simply offer her a lift? We will never know for certain, as the only two people who could provide answers are now deceased and unable to speak. A thorough search of Trionfini's phone revealed no evidence to suggest that he had any prior connection to Agustina. Hundreds of mourners attended Agustina Invincariad's funeral to pay their respects, whereas, surprisingly, not even Pablo Trionfini's family members showed up to his own funeral, according to reports by Argentine media outlets. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Kirti Vyas. Kirti Vyas, a 28-year-old resident of Mumbai, lived with her family in a Bharatnagar residence on Grand Road. After completing her education, she worked in the finance department at a famous beauty salon in Andheri West, Mumbai. On March 16, 2018, Kirti followed her daily routine, leaving her house at 7 a.m. to head to the office. Her two friends were already waiting for her in their car, and together they drove to work. However, Kirti failed to return home that evening, and her family was unable to contact her as her phone was switched off. Concerned, they reported her disappearance to the police. Despite an extensive 50-day search, there was no trace of Kirti. It wasn't until the police conducted a thorough investigation that they found a crucial clue, a drop of blood, which ultimately led them to uncover the truth behind her disappearance. Kirti's family members were busy with their tasks when, around 11:30 a.m., her mother tried to contact her to ask for the Wi-Fi password at home. However, she couldn't reach Kirti because both of her mobile phones were switched off. Assuming Kirti was busy at work, her mother thought she had turned off her phones and focused on her own tasks. Later that evening, Kirti's family grew worried when she didn't come home on time. They called her office and were surprised to learn that Kirti hadn't come to work that day and her phone was consistently switched off. Distressed, they contacted Kirti's close friends, who said they had last spoken to her the previous night. The family then began searching for Kirti in the vicinity, but despite their efforts, her whereabouts remained unknown. The entire night passes, but Kirti fails to return home. The following day, overcome with exhaustion and defeat, Kirti's family files a report of her disappearance at the DB Road police station. After registering the case, the police investigation team visits Kirti's office to gather information about her. They also question her friends. During the interrogation, two of Kirti's friends, Tamna and Kushi Sahajwani, informed the police that they dropped Kirti at Grand Road Station on the day she went missing, as per her request, while they were driving her to the office. To verify their statements, the police examined the CCTV footage outside Kirti's house. The footage clearly shows Kirti leaving her house around 9 a.m. on the morning of March 16, 2018. Tamna and Kushi Sahani were already waiting with their car, and Kirti gets in. They then drive away. Since this was the last time Kirti was seen with her friends, the police asked Tamna and Kushi Sahani to join the investigation team and provide any information they have about Kirti, no matter how small, and details about the events of March 16, 2018. The 28-year-old finance manager, Kirti, has disappeared, and the Mumbai police have yet to uncover any clues about her whereabouts. She was last spotted outside her building, getting into an SUV owned by her colleague. According to her colleague, he dropped her off at Lexington Road. As Kirti was last seen with Siddesh and Kushi, the police initially suspected their involvement in her disappearance. Both have been cooperative with the authorities, assisting in the investigation. Despite days of scrutiny, the police have found no evidence to implicate them. In fact, Siddesh and Kushi have even launched social media campaigns on Facebook and Twitter to help locate Kirti. As a result, the police have cleared them of any suspicion. However, the police are still faced with a daunting task of finding Kirti, whose disappearance remains a mystery. The crime branch had already verified CCTV footage outside Kirti's home, which confirmed that Siddesh and Kushi gave Kirti a lift in their car heading towards the office. However, they claimed to have dropped Kirti near Grand Road Station, but the CCTV footage around that area had not been checked earlier. The crime branch then immediately began scrutinizing the CCTV footage around the station. Additionally, they investigated the CCTV footage from Siddesh Tamana and Kushi Sahajwani's car. A surprising revelation emerged. Neither Kushi, Siddesh, nor Kirti appeared in any CCTV footage around or at the station. Moreover, the CCTV in Siddesh Tamana's car did not confirm that they went towards the station on March 16, 2018. When questioned by the crime branch, Siddesh and Kushi initially claimed to have dropped Kirti at Grand Road Station, but the CCTV evidence contradicted their statement. Later, they changed their story, saying that Kirti had initially asked to be dropped at the station, but then requested to get down near Navjivan Society, which is why they did not reach the station. The prime suspects had repeatedly changed their statements, arousing the policeman's suspicion. As a result, they kept a close eye on both of them. In addition to this, their phone records were checked, but nothing suspicious was found. Consequently, both individuals remained at large for nearly 50 days. Despite Kirti's disappearance without a trace, it seemed as though there would be no leads on their whereabouts. However, the police received a forensic report that completely altered the course of the case. It was discovered that when Kushi, Siddesh, and Kirti were last seen leaving the office on March 16, 2018, the police had immediately sent the car they used for forensic examination. The forensic lab's report revealed that a drop of blood was found in the car's trunk. After subjecting this drop of blood to a DNA test and matching it with a sample from Kirti's parents, it was confirmed that the blood found in the car belonged to Kirti. The presence of Kirti's blood in the car was now revealing a lot. After this revelation, the police take Siddesh Tamanar and Kushi Sahajwani into custody again and begin a rigorous interrogation. Both of them initially claim that they dropped Kirti off on the way and do not know her whereabouts. However, when the police confront them about a drop of Kirti's blood found in the car's trunk, they are unable to provide a clear explanation. Under intense questioning, they eventually crack and start revealing the truth. The truth is shocking. It emerges that KY worked as a finance manager at B. Blunt Salon, while Kushi Sahajwani was Kirti's junior, and Siddesh Tamanar worked as an account executive. Siddesh Tamanar had been employed at the salon for a long time, with decent performance, but had been failing to meet his targets for the past few months, accompanied by continuous errors in his work. As a result, Kirti issues a notice to Siddesh Tamanar, warning him to either improve his performance by March 16, 2018, or face termination. In this notice, Siddesh Tamanar, 28, informs his colleague, 42-year-old Kushi Sahajwani, who works with him. Unbeknownst to others, a romantic relationship had developed between Kushi and Siddesh at the office, despite Kushi being already married. When Kirti issued the notice to Siddesh, Kushi became fearful that she would also lose her job, since Siddesh had failed to improve his performance in March. In response, Kushi and Siddesh concoct a sinister plan. They call Kirti and ask her to meet them at the office, and instead of taking the train, Kirti gets into their EOS sports car. En route, they demand that Kirti not terminate Siddesh's employment, but Kirti responds that the decision would be made at the office meeting. When they don't get their way, the two start physically fighting with Kirti inside the car. During the struggle, Siddesh and Kushi use a scarf to strangle Kirti, keeping her restrained for an extended period, ultimately resulting in her death inside the car. After Kirti's death, the two concoct a plan to discreetly dispose of the body, making it seem like nothing is amiss. They install a sunroof in the car, placing Kirti's body inside, and then head to the office. Upon their return, they drive the car to a secluded area, where they dismember Kirti's body into 3 pieces, all within the vehicle. They subsequently dispose of the pieces in different locations. After securing the evidence, they visit a nearby car wash to thoroughly clean their vehicle, inside and out. From there, they proceed to Kirti's house, where they join forces with her family to stage a search effort, thereby avoiding suspicion. Siddesh and Kushi even launch an online campaign to find Kirti and personally visit the police, ensuring that no doubts are raised. Despite their confidence in evading detection, their luck takes a dramatic turn when the car cleaner's negligence leaves behind a trace of Kirti's blood in the trunk, ultimately exposing the entire incident. Following the full disclosure, Siddesh Tamanar and Kushi Sahajwani are charged with severe offenses, including kidnapping, misleading the police, destroying evidence, and murder. They are subsequently arrested and imprisoned. Currently, regarding the status of this case, Kushi Sahajwani has been released on bail, while Siddesh Tamana remains behind bars. The police have yet to recover Katie's remains. As the Mumbai crime branch continues to search for the body of 28-year-old Kirti Vas, who was murdered on March 16th, they suspect that the body might have been dumped in the area. The search operation is ongoing. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Girish. On November 30th, 2003, Shubha, a 27-year-old law student, became engaged to Girish, a software engineer. Her father, a respected lawyer in Bengaluru, had a stellar reputation in the legal community. As his daughter grew older, he worried about her marital prospects. Consequently, he arranged her marriage to Girish, a suitable match with a good job at a prominent multinational company. The two families had known each other for years, which further solidified the union. Confident that Girish would provide a secure future for his daughter, Shubha's father gave his blessing for the engagement, set to take place on November 30th, 2003, with a wedding planned for April 2004. However, 3 days after the engagement, on December 3rd, 2003, Shubha suggested they celebrate with dinner at a restaurant that evening. Girish was thrilled, as this was the first time his fiancée had taken the initiative to plan a night out. Before dinner, Girish took Shubha to his office to introduce her to his colleagues. Afterwards, they headed to a restaurant on Old Airport Road for dinner. After the meal, around 9:30 p.m., Girish and Shubha began their journey home. But on the way, Shubha asked Girish to stop near the airport's landing strip so they could watch the planes take off and land. Girish agreed, parking his scooter to the side, and they stood together, enjoying the planes and each other's company. Suddenly, 3 boys on motorcycles appeared, attacking Girish. Shubha was left alone to face the 3 armed boys, and she desperately shouted for help. Unfortunately, they were alone at that moment, and the 3 boys brutally beat Girish before fleeing. Shubha persisted in shouting for help, and her cries were fortunately heard by a passing car driver who stopped to assist her and Girish. With great effort, both the car owner and Shubha managed to get Girish into their vehicle and drive him to a nearby hospital. The doctor admitted Girish and immediately began his treatment. Meanwhile, Shubha notified both her and Girish's families about the accident, and within a short time, both families arrived at the hospital. Despite the doctor's best efforts throughout the night, they were ultimately unable to save Girish, and on December 4th, they pronounced him deceased. Since this was a clear-cut case of murder, Girish's father rushed to the nearby police station that same day. He recounted to the police how his son and his fiancée had gone out for dinner the previous night, and how, while they were standing at a landing spot near the airport, Girish was attacked, ultimately leading to his death. The police promptly took over the case and began their investigation by questioning Shubha, the sole eyewitness to Girish's murder. Given her distress, she had been inconsolable since learning of Girish's death. The police approached her gently. However, Shubha's account matched the one Girish's father had already provided, prompting the police to launch a thorough probe of both the crime scene and Girish's background. They even explored the possibility that Girish had personal enemies, but their efforts yielded no concrete leads to crack the case. According to reports, the police were unable to find any CCTV footage in the area, which was largely deserted and lacked residential cameras at the time. Consequently, the investigators turned to Girish and Shubha's engagement video as a potential source of leads. Their motive was to investigate whether someone close to Girish might have been involved in his murder, given that only their families were aware of the couple's trip. The investigative officer meticulously examined the engagement video, focusing on the behavior of their families and relatives. However, no suspicious behavior was detected among them. Undeterred, the officer re-watched the video, this time concentrating on Girish and Shubha's neighbors and other guests in attendance. Unfortunately, this effort also yielded no positive results. In the midst of the investigation, the officer took note of Shuba's facial expressions. Unlike what one would expect, she didn't seem happy and was making an effort to keep her distance from Girish. Initially, the officer had focused on the behavior and expressions of Girish and Shuba's relatives, almost neglecting Shuba herself. But after seeing Shuba's unhappy expressions and attempts to distance herself from Girish in a brief clip, he decided to review the entire engagement video again. Upon re-examining the video, the officer observed that during the ring ceremony, Shuba looked visibly sad while sitting with Girish and was consistently trying to create space between them. This struck the investigating officer as unusual, as newly engaged couples are typically ecstatic. Shuba's evident unhappiness raised his suspicions, but he also recognized that relying solely on a video wasn't enough to take action against her. Therefore, he decided to investigate Shuba's call records. Although it was unusual for the police to use this technology in 2003, as it was still relatively new in India at the time, the officer's interest in technology led him to pursue this avenue. In fact, mobile phones were a rarity in India back then, but Shuba's wealthy family had made it possible for her to own one. Upon obtaining her call records, it was revealed that on December 3rd, Shuba had made repeated calls to a single number. The police then traced the number back to a boy named Aaron Verma. The police then delved deeper to uncover who Aaron Verma was and what his connection to Shuba was. They soon discovered that both Aaron and Shuba attended the same college, with Shuba being 2 years his senior. This new information prompted the officer to track their locations on December 3rd. Shuba's location was found near the airport, as she was with Girish. However, when tracing Aaron's location, the police found that he was also near the airport, following Shuba to every location she visited. This heightened the police's suspicion, and they subsequently tracked down Aaron Verma and summoned him to the police station for questioning. When the police questioned Aaron about his whereabouts on December 3rd, he claimed to have been out of town for work. The instant he made this statement, the investigative officer was convinced that Aaron was lying and would never admit the truth if asked directly. So they released him, but secretly tapped his phone beforehand. The officer suspected that Aaron and Shuba might be involved in Girish's death. However, they couldn't present them as guilty in court based solely on their alibis and call records from that day. Therefore, they put Aaron's phone under surveillance, believing that if he was involved in the murder, he would eventually incriminate himself. Upon returning home from the police station, Aaron's first call was to Shuba. Over the phone, Aaron informed Shuba that the police had questioned him about Girish's death. Shuba asked if he had disclosed anything to the police. Aaron reassured her that he had kept quiet and successfully misled the police, telling them he was out of town on December 3rd. When the police heard the recording, their suspicions were fully corroborated, leading to the immediate arrest of Aaron and Shuba. At the station, the police presented them with the call recording, call detail records, and location history. Initially, both attempted to deceive the police, but eventually, Aaron's nerve failed, and he confessed to the police that they had indeed murdered Girish. The unfolding story stunned everyone. The 19-year-old Aaron and 27-year-old Shuba had been secretly involved for the past 2 years. It was astonishing to learn that Aaron, still in his teenage years, was deeply in love with a woman 7 years his senior. Reports suggest that Shuba also desired to marry Aaron, but their dream remained unrealized. Shuba's father discovered their secret relationship and disapproved of Aaron, who was significantly younger than Shuba. As a result, he hastily arranged Shuba's engagement to Girish, which took place on November 30th. However, Shuba was unhappy with this arrangement. Despite Girish being educated and financially stable, Shuba found his simplicity and modest lifestyle unappealing and felt he wasn't a suitable match for her. During the investigation, it emerged that Shuba had confided in her beautician at the time of her engagement, revealing her intention to either flee before the wedding or harm Girish. Coerced into the engagement by her father, Shuba had now devised a plan with Aaron to eliminate Girish. This explained her repeated calls to Aaron, who agreed to carry out her plan. With the help of his cousin Dinesh, Aaron hired a local thug named Vinay. Shuba planned to lure Girish out of the house on December 3rd, pretending to take him out for dinner. On their way back, she would take him to a secluded spot near the airport's landing strip, where it would be easy to carry out the murder. According to this plan, on December 3rd, after dinner, Shuba expressed her desire to watch airplanes take off. He agreed to his fiancée's request, and they proceeded to the landing spot. Throughout their journey, Shuba kept Aaron informed about her location through regular calls and messages. Shortly after, Aaron, Dinesh, and Venkatesa arrived at the flight landing spot. Dinesh and Venkatesa then launched a brutal attack on Girish, striking him on the head with an iron rod. Girish collapsed instantly, bleeding profusely from his head injury and losing consciousness. Once the four were convinced that Girish was on the brink of death, Aaron and his companions fled the scene, abandoning the iron rod in the nearby bushes. After a significant period following Girish's injury, Shuba sought help, and the rest of the story unfolded. Despite this, Girish's killers managed to evade the police for nearly 50 days until Shuba and her accomplices were arrested on January 25, 2004, when the motive behind Girish's murder and the identities of his killers were finally revealed. The news of the incident spread rapidly throughout the state media. The police gathered all the evidence, interviewed witnesses, and prepared their case file, which was then presented in court. Although the case languished in the regular court for a lengthy period, it was eventually transferred to a fast-track court. Even in the fast-track court, the trial continued from 2007 to 2010. In May 2010, the fast-track court sentenced Shuba, Aaron, and their companions to life imprisonment. However, in July 2010, Shuba filed a bail application with the Karnataka High Court, which upheld the lower court's decision and rejected her bail plea. With no other option, Shuba then filed her bail application with the Supreme Court in August 2014, and the Supreme Court granted her bail for a limited period. The investigative officer who cracked this murder case by reviewing a video recording of the incident deserves appreciation. However, if Shuba had mustered the courage to confide in her father that she didn't like Girish and wouldn't be happy with him in her life, perhaps Girish would be alive today. Even if Shuba had shared her concerns with Girish, maybe he could have persuaded her father. The tragic irony of this story is that by the time Girish's killers were sentenced to life imprisonment, Girish's father had already passed away, leaving no one to find closure. With that, the Girish murder case finally comes. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of John Parker. John Parker was born in 1970, at least one sibling, and an Indiana, United States upbringing. Hailing from a middle-class family, he was an entrepreneurial youth with a passion for independence, self-improvement, and a drive to succeed. Unsurprisingly, after high school, he sought ways to earn a living. According to his brother, his first job was as a waiter's assistant in a restaurant, although his tenure was short-lived for unknown reasons. Undeterred, he soon found a new opportunity that offered greater autonomy and led him to discover his true calling, sales. John started his career as a door-to-door salesman for Kirby vacuum cleaners, a path that initially drew mockery from his family. However, in a remarkably short period, John proved his doubters wrong, discovering his true calling in life. By the end of his first year, he had risen to become the top-performing salesman in the area, and he made it clear that he had no intention of stopping there. Putting in long hours, often exceeding 12 to 16 hours a day, John became not only a sales leader whose accomplishments were regularly recognized at company meetings, but also a mentor and inspiration to his fellow salespeople, who drew new ideas and motivation from him. During this time, John met 20-year-old Judy, a young woman from a low-income family of 3 children in Texas, born in October 1969. Judy was outgoing and confident, and despite John not being actively seeking new salespeople, she persuaded him that she excelled in sales. Though young, Judy was far from shy. In fact, she had already been married at 14 with her parents' consent, was divorced, and had 2 children, Christina and Daniel Hicks, by the time she met John. Impressed, John gave Judy a chance and became her mentor in vacuum cleaner sales. Not only did Judy earn a spot in John's sales force, but she also captured her boss's heart, and they eventually started a romantic relationship. John's life was thriving. As a renowned salesman and trainer, he had earned an excellent reputation, and Judy's support in both his personal and professional life was invaluable. With this solid foundation, he decided to take the leap and start his own business in Michigan, becoming a sales and service operator for Kirby vacuum cleaners. In addition, he offered training sessions for salespeople, sharing his personal secrets and infectious enthusiasm that had contributed to his success in the industry. John's company soon became one of the top performers in the area, a feat he always attributed to Judy's unwavering support. In 1992, with his professional life firmly established, John and Judy got married. The following years were dedicated to demonstrating the potential achievements of a successful salesperson. They had 2 daughters, Tiffany and Erica, adding to their family of 4. As their fortunes grew, they relocated to better residences, and their children began to reap the benefits of John and Judy's hard work. John initially got along well with his wife's children. Christina was a sweet and innocent girl, while Daniel was hyperactive and a bit mischievous. The Parkers had a comfortable life, with excellent schools for the kids, luxurious cars, and frequent vacations. John was building a substantial fortune and wanted to inspire the young salespeople he trained by showing them what they could achieve through hard work. However, Christina's choice of friends was concerning, as she hung out with kids who had behavioral issues and even drank with them. There were also rumors that she used drugs. Meanwhile, 13-year-old Daniel was heading down a troubled path, often appearing angry and poorly supervised. One incident involved Daniel taking John's car without permission and driving recklessly around the neighborhood, damaging many mailbox posts. The next day, John visited the affected homeowners to pay for the damages and avoid having Daniel reported to the police. Around the same time, John was summoned to Daniel's school to address a complaint about his bad behavior. Unfortunately, the encounter ended with John physically disciplining the boy, which created tension in their relationship. After 9 years together, Judy decided it was time to introduce her family to the humble Texas town where she grew up, and to reconnect with one of her brothers, who still called it home. During their visit, Judy confided in her brother that her marriage was on the brink of collapse, and that John's behavior towards her children was a major concern. However, the reality was that Judy herself was failing to acknowledge her older children's wayward paths, instead siding with them, which only added fuel to the already volatile situation. John's situation went from bad to worse when he began to suspect that his wife was having an affair with one of his company's employees. As a man of action, John didn't let problems simmer. He addressed them head-on. To be certain of his suspicions, he installed cameras around the office and eventually gathered irrefutable evidence. This confirmation crushed John, and his friendly demeanor took a drastic turn for the worse. He started drinking excessively, which led to violent arguments with Judy and rough treatment of his children. One day, he brutally beat his daughter Tiffany with a belt after her teacher informed him that she had forgotten her homework. The teacher noticed the marks the next day and reported the incident to social services. Before they arrived, John warned the 4 kids that if they wanted to maintain their luxurious lifestyle, they needed to keep quiet about the beating. Tiffany ended up blaming her stepbrother Daniel, who didn't deny the accusations. John's bad mood didn't only affect his family, it also had a significant impact on his employees and the company's clients, who suffered from his outbursts of rage as a result of his wife's infidelity. In an attempt to separate his wife from her lover, John decided to relocate the family to an exclusive area in Crown Point, Indiana. Despite still loving Judy and hoping that by removing her from temptation, they could start anew, things didn't improve. Although Judy made an effort to improve her appearance by losing weight and changing her look, John, on the other hand, let his beard grow, started smoking, and his wardrobe became limited to jeans. His constant distraction led to the decline of the business, which almost went bankrupt, forcing him to sell his boat to stay afloat. Rumors spread throughout the office that Judy was having an affair with Jeff, John's right-hand man, although it was unclear whether the rumors were true or not. These rumors undoubtedly fueled more disagreements between they. At a certain point, Judy dropped a bombshell. She wanted a divorce, but John knew it wouldn't be that straightforward. He felt he had given Judy everything, rescuing her from poverty, embracing her children, lavishing her with luxuries, and loving her with an all-consuming passion. Now that same passion had curdled into bitter resentment. He retaliated by severing all her financial lifelines. He made it crystal clear, if she walked out, she'd leave with nothing. And he had the ultimate trump card, a recording of her illicit affair with a colleague. At the start of 2003, the strained relationship between John and Judy had taken its toll on their children, whose behavior continued to deteriorate. Tiffany's actions were particularly concerning, having recently been grounded for setting a fire on school grounds with a friend. The turning point came on Thursday, April 17, 2013, when John and Judy decided to have dinner alone at a restaurant, likely in an attempt to find a resolution to their marital issues, or, at the very least, ease the tension. After dining, they phoned home to check on the kids and informed them they would be back soon. Christina requested that they stop by her office to pick up a forgotten school notebook. On their way back, they made a detour to the office, and John took the opportunity to drop off the leftover dinner to Jeff, who was allegedly working late. They arrived at the office in a deserted industrial area just before 10 p.m. As John talked to Jeff inside, Judy retrieved her daughter's notebook and headed back to their car parked outside. Moments later, John emerged from the office and opened the rear door on the driver's side to search for something in the vehicle. Suddenly, two loud bangs echoed through the air, and John crumpled to the parking lot floor. Almost instantly, 911 operators received frantic calls from Judy and Jeff. Police and medical assistance units responded to the scene within minutes. Tragically, John, 33 years old, had been shot in the back of the head and was declared dead at the scene. When questioned, Judy, who was inside the car at the time of the incident, was unable to provide much insight. She stated that she had been sitting in the car when her husband emerged from the office, opened the back door on the driver's side, and immediately heard two shots. Judy recalled that upon hearing the gunfire, she instinctively hid, using the seat for cover, and when she finally looked up, she caught a glimpse of a dark-clad figure fleeing the scene. John's wallet was missing, leading investigators to initially suspect a robbery. However, as they delved deeper into the scene, doubts began to arise. Several questions troubled the investigators. Why would someone target this desolate industrial area at night, with no one around to witness the crime? If it were a robbery, why would the perpetrator take John's life first and then steal his wallet, when they could have easily taken the $20,000 gold Rolex he was wearing, as well as other accessible jewelry? And why didn't the thief search John's pockets, a common practice in such assaults? 2 bullet casings were recovered at the scene, corroborating Judy's account of hearing 2 explosions. One of the shots had killed John almost instantly, while the fate of the second remained unclear due to a lack of official information. With their minds racing with questions, the investigators launched their inquiry. And naturally, Judy was the first to be questioned. She revealed that her husband had a dispute with a company employee sometime prior and was able to identify the individual. However, beyond this, Judy was unable to provide any further insight beyond her initial statement at the scene. Jeff, likewise, proved unhelpful. He was inside the office and only emerged after hearing the shots, by which time everything was already over. Meanwhile, the authorities contacted the Parker residence, where Christina answered the call and was informed of her stepfather's passing. With the robbery motive all but dismissed, detectives shifted their focus to John's inner circle, starting with the disgruntled employee who had allegedly harbored resentment. The man acknowledged their intense argument, but claimed it had been amicably resolved, and his alibi checked out after a thorough investigation. The investigation subsequently cast a wide net, encompassing nearly everyone close to the young businessman: business partners, past and current employees, competitors, and even John's friends and family. The only somewhat suspect discovery was the interaction between the widow and the company's general manager, though it ultimately yielded no concrete evidence. Judy's demeanor at her husband's funeral was peculiar, to say the least. Observers noted that she seemed cheerful, chatting with friends and acquaintances, a stark contrast to the somber mood expected of her. Meanwhile, her ex-husband, father of their 2 children, appeared surprisingly at ease, casually reading a newspaper during the service. 4 days after John's murder, 15-year-old Daniel was questioned about his involvement. 6 months prior, Daniel had paid gang members to kill his stepfather, but they kept the money and didn't follow through. After John's murder, investigators looked into Daniel again. Daniel confessed to paying to hurt John, not kill him, but was released after 9 days due to lack of evidence. Later, it was revealed that John's issues with Judy's children had sparked a deeper investigation into Daniel, which led to suspicions about Judy's 17-year-old daughter, Christina. When questioned, Christina denied any involvement, and like before, the alleged plan was dismissed. Investigators became curious about the funding behind these schemes, suspecting Judy as the primary source, given that both teenagers had expressed a desire to eliminate John. Further inquiry revealed that Judy and John's relationship had significantly deteriorated prior to his death, with at least one of Judy's extramarital affairs coming to light. However, sources indicated that John was committed to salvaging the relationship and had no intention of leaving his wife. The primary motive behind Judy's alleged targeting of her husband seemed to be financial, with detectives discovering 2 life insurance policies totaling $1 million. Judy had attempted to claim this money following her husband's death, but the insurance company initially refused to pay out, citing the ongoing investigation into his death. The payment was further complicated by John's father, who harbored suspicions about Judy's involvement in his son's demise. Despite these leads, the case eventually stalled, with only circumstantial evidence available. However, significant changes occurred within the Parker family household. Judy was rarely home, preoccupied with her new partner, Jeff, John's trusted manager. In her absence, the older siblings took care of their younger half-sisters, Tiffany and Erica. Months later, Judy and Jeff decided to move out of state with Judy's younger daughters, while Daniel went to live with his biological father. Christina remained in the house, now pregnant and with a boyfriend. Although the case stalled, authorities stayed vigilant, revisiting files for a break. After a new lead, they questioned Christina and Daniel's schoolmates, who confessed to selling them a gun. This tip led detectives to Christina's family land, where they found bullet casings matching those from John's crime scene. In 2007, a narcotics officer, who had been investigating Christina's ex-boyfriend in a drug-related case, came forward with crucial information. The ex-boyfriend, seeking a more lenient sentence, revealed a conversation he had with Judy in which she implicated her son Daniel as the one who had fired the fatal shot that killed John. When confronted with this new evidence, 21-year-old Christina, whose connection to the murder weapon had already been established, quickly began to cooperate. She confessed to buying the weapon and calling her parents on the night of the incident. asking them to stop by the office under the guise of picking up forgotten homework. She also admitted to being involved in the plan to kill John, with her brother Daniel as the designated shooter. When 19-year-old Daniel was apprehended in Arizona, he was confronted with the new ballistics evidence and his sister's testimony. He promptly confessed to shooting John, but claimed that Judy, their mother, orchestrated the entire plot. Daniel revealed that Judy had fraudulently cashed company checks to raise the $7,500 needed to hire hitmen, but the initial plan failed when the hired individuals took the money without fulfilling their contract. Judy then allegedly instructed them to buy the weapon for Daniel to use. Moreover, Daniel claimed it was Judy's idea to fabricate the pretext for leaving the house that night by making the call about the homework. He admitted to shooting John once in the head, and the second shot was an accidental discharge while searching John's pocket for his wallet, as per his mother's instructions. He was also told to return home without arousing his younger sisters, a task made possible by Christina, who kept the girls occupied with television. The siblings alleged that their mother had coerced them into committing the crime by claiming they were victims of abuse at the hands of John, and promising them a better life filled with more money and freedom. It was also disclosed that this was not Judy's first attempt to kill her husband, as she had previously attempted to poison his food, resulting in only a brief hospitalization for John under the pretense of food poisoning. By the end of 2007, Christina and Daniel were formally charged with murder and conspiracy. Christina entered a not guilty plea for the conspiracy charge and was released on bail several months later in March 2008. Daniel, then 20 years old, pleaded guilty to a conspiracy charge for involvement in his stepfather's murder and agreed to cooperate, implicating his mother in the crime. In exchange, prosecutors agreed not to pursue the more serious charge of murder, although Daniel still faced a sentence of 20 to 25 years in prison. According to Daniel, nearly a year prior to the incident, when he was just 14, his mother and sister first approached him to participate in John's murder. He claimed that his mother provided him and his sister with money to purchase a handgun, along with black clothing, gloves, and a mask for the day of the crime. She also allegedly gave him explicit instructions on how to carry out the task, including taking a thorough shower upon returning home to eliminate any traces of gunpowder residue. Ultimately, Judy took it upon herself to dispose of the weapon, the clothes worn during the crime, and her husband's wallet. In July 2009, 6 years after her husband's death, Judy faced the inevitable and surrendered to the authorities, agreeing to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. By doing so, she acknowledged her role in planning, executing, and covering up the crime. The prosecution requested a life sentence with a minimum of 28 years and a maximum of 35 years. Nearing 40, Judy was sentenced to 33 years in prison in late August 2009. The following month, Daniel received a 23-year sentence, and in early October, Christina, who pleaded guilty to aiding a criminal, was sentenced to 5 years. Press reports indicate that Daniel was released in 2017 after participating in a community transition court program and subsequently lived a low-profile life. Christina served 4 years of her sentence and was released in 2013, but tragically died from a drug overdose shortly after her release. This case is defined by unrelenting greed. Judy's difficult early life and subsequent success only fueled her insatiable desire for more, driving her to commit appalling crimes. Tragically, her actions not only ruined a thriving entrepreneur, but also had a profound impact on her 4 children, resulting in 2 being imprisoned and leaving the younger ones once again without their father and mother. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jonia Berry. Jonia Berry was born on August 26, 1983, and grew up to be a happy and friendly person with a large social circle and a love for parties. During her school days, she was an active member of the local cheerleading team. After completing high school, Jonia enrolled at East Tennessee State University to pursue a degree in psychology and criminology. It was during this period that she met Jason White, and they began dating. The couple got engaged just before graduating in late 2004. At the age of 21, Jonia decided to pursue a master's degree in psychology, which led her to temporarily relocate to Knoxville for her studies. While in Knoxville, she worked part-time at a children's educational center, where she discovered her passion for helping kids. Meanwhile, Jonia's fiancé, Jason, was studying law in a different state. Despite the distance, they remained close and began planning their wedding in Knoxville. Initially, Jonia stayed with her friend, Jason Amami, who had also attended college with her and later moved to Knoxville. They shared a 2-bedroom apartment, and Jason allowed Jonia to stay there until she found her own place to live. Jonia had 2 part-time jobs, one at a jewelry store and the other at a children's hospital. On the Sunday night of December 5th, after finishing her shift at the jewelry store, Jonia went to the mall to do some Christmas shopping. Later, she returned home and spent her evening wrapping presents for the children at the educational center, chatting with her neighbor, and then retreating to her room. Before going to bed, she had a phone conversation with her boyfriend. Around 4 in the morning, Jason Amami was awoken by a scream from a woman. At first, he thought Jonia was having a nightmare, so he went to her room to check on her. However, he was shocked to find a stranger wielding a knife. The intruder attacked Jason, and they engaged in a fierce struggle. Eventually, Jason managed to fend off the attacker and made a dash for the door. He rushed out of the apartment and ran to the nearest convenience store, almost a kilometer away, to call for help. When the store clerk saw Jason, who was covered in blood, they immediately called 911. Jason explained to the police what had happened when they arrived at the scene. At their apartment, the police found Jonia lying in the hallway that connected 5 apartments. She was still alive, but barely conscious. When the police questioned her about the attacker, she could only provide weak clues. The police searched the entire building and the surrounding area, but were unable to find the attacker. They rushed Jonia to the nearest hospital, where despite the doctor's best efforts, they were unable to save her. The doctor reported that she had suffered more than 20 stab wounds, making survival highly unlikely. Jason had 8 wounds from the attacker. Although only one was critical, he received medical attention, and his life was no longer in danger. Meanwhile, the detectives began investigating the crime scene. They discovered blood in the hallway, indicating that Jonia had attempted to seek help from her neighbors, but none of them had opened their doors. Next to Jonia's room, the detectives found the murder weapon, a kitchen knife that belonged to Jason, which the attacker had used with such force that it became bent and damaged. The police discovered blood near the back door of the apartment and on the stairs leading to the street. As Jason and Jonia had exited through the front door, detectives believed the killer likely escaped through the back door in Jason's room. Another clue was found, a partial footprint, possibly left by the attacker when they followed Jason and attacked him. The brutal nature of Jonia's murder led police to suspect a personal motive. Initial investigations focused on Jonia's boyfriend, despite him being approximately 1,000 kilometers away from Knoxville. However, friends and family testified to their wonderful relationship, and he had no apparent reason to commit such a heinous crime. He learned of Jonia's death when her mother called him at 10 a.m. and claimed to have fainted and taken a long time to recover. In his incapacitated state, he required a neighbor's assistance to book a plane ticket and pack his suitcase. After carefully verifying his alibi, investigators concluded he couldn't have physically traveled to Knoxville and back by morning, thus ruling him out as a suspect and shifting their attention to Jonia's neighbor. In contrast to Jonia's boyfriend, who had a solid alibi, this particular neighbor did not, which raised suspicions that he might be the perpetrator. Many friends and family members of Jonia suspected him, with some believing he could be the killer, and others accusing him of leaving Jonia behind as he fled the apartment. The suspicion was so deep-seated that Jonia's parents didn't even want him to attend her funeral. After Jason was released from the hospital, investigators started questioning him. He maintained his original story, stating that he had heard screams, seen an unfamiliar man, and was attacked after successfully fighting off the attacker. Jason rushed to the front door, went out into the street, and sought help from the neighbors. He thought Jonia had also escaped from the apartment because he could no longer hear her screams. However, the police had doubts about the truth of this testimony. Doubts about Jason initially stemmed from his injuries. Although he had 8 wounds, 7 were superficial, and the 8th on his right arm could have been sustained while either defending himself or attacking someone. Furthermore, the absence of forced entry into the apartment suggested that the assailant might have already been inside. Jason claimed to have taken out the trash through the back door that night, but he couldn't recall whether he had locked it. The detectives pressed him further, focusing on which door he used to exit the apartment onto the street. Jason maintained that he had left through the front door, but the police suspected he was lying. If Jason had actually exited through the back door, it would account for the bloodstains near the door leading to the stairs, thereby heightening suspicions against him. Additionally, the police accused him of using and selling illegal drugs and of becoming aggressive when he couldn't get his fix. Jason denied all these allegations, but the investigators continued to level various charges against him. After spending several hours at the police station, the detectives asked Jason to take a polygraph test, and to their surprise, he accepted. An expert was brought in to administer the test, during which Jason was asked a series of leading questions. When the test was over, the investigators told him that he had failed, suggesting that his responses were false. This news caused Jason to become extremely upset, shouting that he was innocent and had no involvement in the crime, that his life was in danger, and that the real perpetrator was still at large. Despite his protests, the detectives remained skeptical. Police couldn't charge Jason due to lack of evidence. Lab analysis of the murder weapon revealed 3 DNA samples: the victim's, Jason's, and an unknown man's. The unknown DNA was also found elsewhere in the apartment. A bloody fingerprint on the knife handle didn't match Jason's. These findings suggested another person was present, but the unknown DNA didn't match any in the database. Despite this, public opinion still doubted Jason's innocence. Jason developed PTSD after a flawed polygraph test led to false accusations. In reality, Jason had severe lung and neck injuries with little hope of recovery. However, due to police report inaccuracies, his treatment was only 25% covered, leaving him in financial distress. After the police stopped suspecting him, they started questioning Jason as a witness. Based on his account, they managed to create a rough description of the attacker. However, the situation was complicated by the fact that Jason didn't get a clear look at the assailant's face. The apartment was dimly lit, and the attacker had pounced on him as soon as he left the room. In Jonia's room, the investigators made an intriguing discovery. A cap was found near the back staircase, along with discs and a stereo player. At first, they thought these items might belong to Jonia or Jason, but Jason denied any connection to them, claiming they were not in his apartment. This led the investigators to suspect that the killer might have left them behind. The police released a rough sketch of the suspect to the media, and after it was published, they received hundreds of leads. Many people reported individuals who vaguely matched the sketch, prompting the detectives to investigate each of these leads. One lead in particular caught their attention: a group of local teenagers known to break into houses to steal. One of these teenagers, 19-year-old Michael, bore a resemblance to the suspect's sketch. The police launched a search for Michael, which was made more complicated by the fact that he was already wanted for theft. With the possibility of his involvement in murder, 2 police units joined the search for Michael. They tracked down Michael and brought him in for questioning about the murder. As soon as he was in custody, the investigators turned their attention to his shoes, which had a tread pattern that was similar to the footprint found at the crime scene. They took DNA and fingerprint samples from Michael and sent them to the lab for analysis. While waiting for the results, they questioned him, and he made a surprising confession. Michael claimed that he and a friend had broken into Gia's apartment that night, intending to steal valuables. However, he said his friend had taken a knife and attacked Gia. But the detectives soon grew suspicious of Michael's story. The details he provided didn't match the evidence they had collected, and there was no sign of 2 strangers at the crime scene. The lab results only added to their doubts. Michael's DNA and fingerprints didn't match those found at the murder scene, and his shoes didn't match the tread pattern found in Gia's room. In the end, the police concluded that Michael had made up the whole story. It may seem strange, but it's not uncommon for people to falsely confess to high-profile crimes, often to get attention or a reward. It's unclear what motivated Michael, but his confession turned out to be completely false. Following the murder, investigators questioned over 1,000 potential suspects and collected around 400 DNA samples. However, none of them matched the evidence found at the crime scene. In an effort to encourage people to come forward with information, a reward was offered early on in the investigation. As time went on, the reward amount increased each month. By December 2005, a year after the murder, the reward had reached $60,000. The state governor also contributed an additional $20,000 from his own funds, drawing even more public attention to the case. Despite the many leads, all of them ultimately led to dead ends. As a result, the case remained unsolved for several years. In 2007, the victim's parents took action, seeking changes in state legislation. They found it surprising that the murderer's fingerprints and DNA were not in any databases, considering the brutality of the crime. The parents refused to believe that this was the perpetrator's first offense. They later discovered that, according to Tennessee laws, fingerprints and DNA samples were only collected from people who had been convicted of a crime. Jason's parents were determined to bring about change. They took an active role in shaping a new law that required the collection of DNA samples from all individuals arrested for violent crimes. The authorities backed this initiative, and the law was passed in May 2007. 2 months later, a significant breakthrough occurred in the case. The police arrested 22-year-old Taylor Lee Olson for violating his probation terms. Olson had a lengthy criminal record, mainly involving theft, check forgery, and auto theft, with multiple previous arrests. Remarkably, despite his history of run-ins with the law, his fingerprints and DNA had never been collected. Olson lived with his girlfriend and their newborn daughter, but his criminal activities persisted. It was revealed that Olson had already come to the investigators' attention 5 months earlier when they received a tip about his possible involvement in the murder. However, for reasons unknown, the police had not pursued DNA samples for analysis at that time. Nevertheless, with his new arrest for probation violation, they finally decided to question him about Jonia's case. Olson eventually confessed his involvement in the murder and willingly provided a DNA sample. When the lab results came in, it was confirmed that Taylor's DNA was a complete match with the sample found in the victim's apartment. Following this, they collected his fingerprints, which also matched the fingerprint on the murder weapon. Olson was subsequently arrested, and detectives began to question him. Initially, Olson said he was not guilty, but he eventually decided to confess to his actions. Taylor claimed that on that night, he had intended to steal Jonia's car and had entered her apartment through the back door to find the car keys. When he entered her room, she woke up and began screaming. In response, Olsen grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed her multiple times. However, he insisted that he hadn't intended to kill anyone, and that it had all occurred accidentally. Detectives had doubts about the truthfulness of some details, and leaned towards believing that Taylor had premeditated the murder. It was possible that he had been stalking the victim for some time, indirectly supported by the fact that Jonia's friends had reported someone following her in a car at the time. No evidence was found to substantiate this, but after Olsen's arrest, it seemed increasingly plausible. Despite this, there was little doubt about his culpability, as his DNA and fingerprints were present on the murder weapon, strongly indicating his involvement. Olsen's trial was slated to commence in mid-2008, and by that point, he had already retained a lawyer. Apparently, his legal counsel advised him to retract his confession, and Taylor presented a new version of events to the detectives. Now, he claimed that he had entered Jonia's apartment with his friend named Noah Cox. According to this revised account, when Olsen entered Gia's room to retrieve the car keys, she allegedly woke up, seized a knife, and stabbed him several times. Olsen then fled through the back door, while his friend entered Gia's room, disarmed her, and killed her. This new narrative raised suspicions among the police, as they found no fingerprints or DNA from other individuals at the crime scene, making it appear unlikely that anyone else was involved. Detectives awaited the start of the trial, but it never occurred. On March 28, 2008, Taylor Olsen took his own life in his prison cell. Alongside him, several suicide notes were discovered, addressed to his family, Joan, his relatives, and the police. In the note to the detectives, he once again alleged that his friend Noah Cox was the actual perpetrator, and also apologized to Gia's family and his own. Detectives continued to believe that Olsen was responsible for the murder and repeatedly questioned him, but they found no evidence implicating him. Gia's parents also remained skeptical, believing that Olsen was lying. In their view, if Taylor was truly innocent, he wouldn't have taken his own life. It seemed more likely that he simply did not want to spend the rest of his life in prison. Furthermore, for several months following his initial confession, Olsen had consistently maintained that he had entered the apartment alone and that there was no one else with him. The sudden change in his story to shift blame onto his friend raised further doubts.